Touchdown, Nick Anderson!
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Jawar Jordan hits the hole off right tackle. Jordan, here he goes! This place is gonna rock!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Missouri still trying to get set from the end zone. Cook throws wide. It's intercepted. House call for Major Burns. And LSU is going to escape Columbia with a win.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Here's King from the pocket. Flush to his right with 6. 5. Going to loop it downfield. And ball is caught. Touchdown, Georgia Tech. With 1 second to go in the ball game, Christian Leary hauls it in.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
They pitch it left. Williams goes down. And USC wins the game in triple overtime.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Trey Benson off to the races. One guy to beat. High step in. He got smoked for the Hokies. Touchdown. 85 yards.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Here we go on a Monday with more evidence in college football. Good afternoon. I'm David Smoak with Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and of course, 365 Sports up until 6 o'clock. The evidence we have is that Oklahoma is now the one, at least at this particular time, that is running the Big 12 after the win in Dallas. Dramatic win, 34-30. We will get into Texas Tech burying Baylor and maybe literally burying Baylor. Among a note about TCU quarterback Chandler Morris, we'll look at the top 25. But I do know this. The throw that Dylan Gabriel made for the touchdown, if you could get a freeze frame of where he was and who was around him when he was about to be just a collapsed pocket, although good protection enough to keep him to have the time, that right there was incredibly focused, and the touchdown pass to win the game, even with UT throwing the ball in the end zone at the end of the game. Oklahoma has truly improved of who they were, what they were last year. Good for Brent Venables and company.
Yeah, that was one of the best football games I've ever watched. I thought it was very back and forth, and I think I said this on Saturday. Usually when that game gets close, it's because everybody's playing too with their hair on fire and there's penalties and it gets kind of sloppy, or they're playing too tight because of the rivalry game. I just thought it was just a fun game to watch. It was back and forth, and each team had their moments, and and I'm sure Steve Sarkisian feels this, that Briles offense that they're running at Oklahoma is set up perfectly to score in a minute and change. Like, that's exactly, like, Oklahoma could not have drawn up a better situation for their offense to be in. It's exactly what it was invented for, and they executed it perfectly on that last drive.
It was an incredible game. Absolutely exhilarating final chapter regular season-wise to the OU-Texas rivalry in the Big 12. Of course, we can see that again in the Big 12 championship game. And as it stands right now, especially coming out of this weekend, guys, that seems like the likelihood based on what we saw from some of the other contenders in the league. That is not shaping up to be a jam-packed race behind OU and Texas at this point. But, hey, it's only the halfway point. A lot of things can change. But as far as that game, I mean, yeah, just an all-time classic. If you're Texas, I think you exit that game obviously disappointed, but I don't feel like you think that you're a worse team necessarily. I think that you feel like, hey, we turned the ball over a lot. We had our opportunities, had the lead with a little over a minute to go. If we play them again, we can win this game. I think if you're Oklahoma, you look at the way that you won that game and you feel like, well, we didn't play our best necessarily either, but the style that we play now, if we line up again, we can win that game again. And just kudos to Brent Venables. There was the dust up with Jeff Levy there a couple of weeks ago. They obviously straightened that out. Hadn't been a peep as far as that goes, and the offense has been smooth sailing pretty much ever since then. So that was a big challenge for them that they overcame. What about Dylan Gabriel and just what kind of a game would it be for him? His first Red River turned into a legacy game for him, one of the biggest performances of his career. And just as a whole, they put their new identity out there of we're going to play nasty, good, fun defense, and we're also going to have our, big-time quarterback back there making big-time plays for us, and, the guys around him stepped up and made some plays as well. So, just a game that could have gone either way, truly at various points in that game, and certainly there at the end it looked like he was going to go UT's way, but credit to Oklahoma, and that offense, like you said, Paul, allows you to, score quickly and score in situations like that. So, an awesome game. An awesome result for Oklahoma, not so much for Texas, but besides the undefeated record and now the playoff being a little bit smaller of a margin, but not out of the picture, I think Texas is still sitting okay as well. It's just the bruised ego of losing to your rival and losing in dramatic fashion like that.
To me, the biggest surprise of that game, in the rivalry game, we've seen Texas come in as an underdog and win. We've seen Oklahoma have the underdog label and win. To me, what really did surprise me was I thought Oklahoma physically was better. That doesn't mean that Texas did not have their moments, because they did, but I thought that what Oklahoma did to get off to the quick start, to score immediately, even after the block punt, which usually in a team has a punt block, they lose the game. But I thought Oklahoma's defense really was after Ewers from almost snap one, and then, of course, forced 3 turnovers, the 2 picks, and also the fumble. I was surprised by that, but that's what I thought. That doesn't mean, again, that they're not both very, right here, because they are, but that was the part that surprised me the most.
Yeah, I mean, they've totally organized themselves into, what you're seeing a lot now is the comparisons to that 2000 national championship team with Bob Stoops' second year, and they went on to beat – who did they beat? Y'all remember who they remember they had a Heisman contender at quarterback, that team they beat in the national championship game. Who was that they beat?
In 2000?
Y'all are listening. Florida State is who
yes.
they beat, because I'm trying to tell a joke.
Yeah,
Thank you. So Florida State was who they beat, and my attempt at humor went awry, I guess. Yeah. But, that's the identity that they seem to have, is more along those lines and less about Lincoln Riley-style football teams, and I think it suits them well. I think it suits them a lot better than the Lincoln Riley-style teams. I think this is more Oklahoma football. I think that's what's probably the most exhilarating about it is, the Heisman quarterbacks are fun and everything, but as they saw, that didn't win them any big-time championships outside of the Big 12, right? I mean, they won a bowl game here and there, but they didn't win national titles, and when they got to that point, what kind of failed them? It'd be defense, right? Yep. So, this way, I think you're better equipped, and I think you're just better suited to go where you want to ultimately go. And, time will tell, but I think it's refreshing. I think it fits them more, and I think that they're onto something, obviously, and I give Brent Venables a lot of credit. I wasn't all in. I wasn't convinced that this year was going to be a huge bounce back, and there's a long way to go, but they are so obviously better and so obviously a different team in more of his vein, and it shows, and they're playing really well right now.
Altoid, go ahead.
They're doing well with what they have, too. Like there was this, last year they got so rated by the transfer portal, it would have been impossible to think that they were going to win the Big 12, because you just can't, think about Oklahoma going through something that they literally have never gone through as a university before, and then having to reboot that. But the way that they, it wasn't, to me, they weren't trying to do things that they, think they should be doing. They were doing the things they know they can do. Nothing was experimental. It was like, okay, this is what we can do. This is what we're going to do. And they executed it well throughout that game. They didn't try to be like, well, this worked before. You see that a lot. Like, well, it worked before. Well, this guy's not the other guy. They were playing well within themselves.
Altoid Floyd, biggest takeaways, in my opinion, for the Big 12 weekend. Iowa State is resilient. TCU will still make a bowl. Oklahoma State is back from the grave for now. And Texas, in Altoid's opinion, beat themselves. I don't know if that was the case. I think Oklahoma forced some of that. And so, but I just know this, that there's a good chance they might meet again like they did just a handful of years ago when Texas won with Ellinger against Kyler Murray, and then Oklahoma won the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, if you're Texas, I mean, again, you had the lead there with a minute to go. You couldn't have thought. I mean, against most other teams, that's probably not going to be enough time to get the job done. And for Oklahoma with that offense and that quarterback and their weapons, they were able to do that. But I think it's like I said a few minutes ago. I think if you're Oklahoma, you feel great. You still feel good about potentially meeting them again down the line. But I think to your point, if you're Texas, you also go, well, we had 3 turnovers and we did this and we did that. And you can break down that game and see a few different things where if you just don't do that the next time around or you do it better, then, you maybe get them or you will get them the next time. So, I think that there's a collision course. Maybe some other parties interrupt that, although it's hard to see right now in this league, really. But, I would not be mad with a rematch, although I know that most Big 12 fans don't want to see that because that means the 2 teams leaving are playing for the title in Arlington, although that would be kind of fitting, honestly. But, I think if you're Texas, you're not too down in the mud. You're disappointed, but you're not, worried about like, oh, my gosh, we're in trouble here. You know that you're still pretty good.
Now, if with the loss, they don't have time or room for a mulligan.
Right.
If they want to be a part of the big picture, that doesn't mean they still can't play for a Big 12 title, but the big picture because of how they got off to the start, beating Alabama. Altoid, again, Dylan Gabriel balled out. Texas giving a 6-year quarterback the ball back with 1:19 to go was a boneheaded move. There were some thoughts and opinions about whether Texas used the clock correctly when they had the ball to set up the game. At least a go-ahead field goal. I need to ask this. And by the way, good for Paxton. We know he's a huge UT fan. He opened up yet again the first one right off the top of being in the chat room with his Hook 'em Horns logo. When was the last time, and I don't know when it was, that a Texas kicker with a chance to tie the game or win the game, and usually win the game with a field goal in the last 5 or 6, 8 seconds, missed the field goal? When was the last time? The last time they played A&M. Almost every time, it seemed like many years, it was against Nebraska. Against Baylor in 2012. Dicker, when he beat Oklahoma the year that they beat OU, and then Oklahoma won the Big 12 championship game. It does appear, that doesn't mean they've been flawless, but when it comes to that kick, and I mean, Auburn just split the uprights, but then again, it looked like it was over. But no, it wasn't, as Oklahoma showed. Talk about resilient, because it looked like they had with the going forward at midfield and failing, missing a field goal from 44 yards out that wasn't even close, but they did. Oklahoma did win the game.
But and I think Steve Sarkisian, I mean, as soon as he kicked the field goal, he was probably, okay, fine. Hopefully that's all that they get. At best, all they get's a field goal. But knowing that, he knows that offense. I mean, he runs it fast too. Sometimes it's not the same. But the whole point of that offense is to go fast. Like that, it's the Ricky Bobby offense. It's just go fast, and everything else is ancillary to. If you're executing fast. And so 1 minute and 19 seconds for them is like 6 minutes for Texas A&M. I mean, like that's just how it works, because that's how fast the offense moves and that's how fast they practice. So when Oklahoma gets the ball back with 1 minute and 19 seconds left, they're not even worried about it. Timeouts, no timeouts, doesn't matter, because they're calling a play in 4 seconds no matter what.
The key to any drive that is that distance and with that little time is the first play of the drive. If you throw an incomplete pass, even if it takes 6 seconds off the clock, you're behind the clock immediately as far as down and distance. He threw the pass to Stoops. He picked up the first down. Then there was another one. And it allowed them to move down the field with chunks. But that's the one that kickstarted the drive. Because if you get 4 yards or you get sacked, we know pretty much there is no chance. Addicted to capping. Sports 365 Sports, curious what you guys think. In my opinion, Kansas is the 3rd best team in the conference. They definitely have a path to the Big 12 title game if they can beat Oklahoma, which is, of course, coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, I think they're right now they're the 3rd best team in the conference.
Ahead of West Virginia?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then West Virginia, West Virginia's got
a beauty pageant, yes.
Yeah. But we'll see. I mean, this is not, to me, an insanely deep league right now. I think you've got a bunch of teams that, as where the last couple of years, I think it was a deep league. I think right now it's all right. I mean, it's not the worst, it's not the best, but it's not what it has been. You've got Texas and Oklahoma at the top, and then you've got West Virginia and Kansas trying to show that they're better than, a year ago for sure, and better than a lot of people think. And then you've got a lot of teams that are just for the most part disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, there's two national championship contenders, and they're Oklahoma and Texas. There's two playoff contenders, it's them. There's two favorites for the Big 12 title game, it's them. I think who could pop in there to answer your question? Yeah, Kansas would be the next best bet right now. Absolutely. Now, if that's Jalen Daniels' health has to be included into that. With him healthy, I think they're clearly the third best. No disrespect to West Virginia, but I think, as good as their defense might be, this and that offense, you got to be able to score points, and they still haven't proven they can do that consistently. But I do think West Virginia is a good team. Don't get me wrong. I would just take a Jalen Daniels-led Kansas team over a West Virginia right now as far as who I think could be the most competitive. So, yeah, I think they're sitting pretty. Handle their business, obviously. Get him healthy. You have a great backup there that can handle things in the meantime with Jason Bean, as we talked about a bunch of times. UCF, I mean, golly, the last 2 weekends for them, especially rushing-wise, we already knew going into that Baylor game their rush defense wasn't that great. And then Baylor, who clearly still can't run the football, was able to run on them at will. And then you've got Kansas chalking up 399 yards rushing with Devin Neal and company. I mean, my goodness, I don't know how sustainable that is, but it was a great showing for KU. And, yeah, I would have them solidly in third place right now. But as we've seen with this conference, everybody could end up 500 at the end of this thing because everybody's just on the same pretty much level outside of the Sooners and the Longhorns. But if you're the Jayhawks, I do think you're in a good spot as we're at the midway point.
Somebody brought up that UCF is kind of getting a taste of the Big 12, and there's still that stat, right? About the teams that joined, although Cincinnati, not this weekend, but next, will play at home against Baylor. Camelo, the goal line stand will live forever in Red Raider rivalry history. Remarkable. There was a game back, I want to think back in the 80s. I think it was in the 80s, and I covered it. Kid from Gladewater, Texas, who played for Texas. His name was Stoney Clark, one of those big, immovable defensive lineman, stuffed OU at the goal line. It was one of the most dramatic plays. But yes, how they did that, and Sark took responsibility for the series and the call. But that was incredible.
He didn't take responsibility for the call. I mean, Xavier Worthy was, a normal tackle. It was a great tackle on Xavier Worthy. So he can take responsibility for that all he wants. But that play on fourth down was a normal attempt at a tackle from working. The tackle that they made on Xavier Worthy was fantastic. So sometimes the play call is right. It's just the other guy does something you can't anticipate.
Yeah, and the way he got twisted, I know there were Texas fans that were looking for a possible face mask or something along those lines, but I guess they just grabbed, the helmet perfectly enough to just twist. And that was football's a game of inches right there, right? That was a perfect example of an inch here or there, and that's a touchdown. His knee doesn't quite go down where it goes down. But, yeah, to your point, Camelo, that was an incredible goal line stand. That wasn't just one play. That was the whole shebang right there that they had to sit back and just bow up and get stops. And they did it, and they did it despite all of the funky, flashy, physical too, though, weapons like Jonathan Brooks that Texas has. They stonewalled it, and that's where the 2000 Oklahoma comparisons come from. That's where this is more of the style that we want and that we can really live and breathe and fits us. That's where that comes from. The flashy offense is fun, and they still have some of that. They still have that. As they showed with that game-winning drive and, just their offense all year, that's what they can still do. But the difference this year is that defense. It's that nastiness, and no way in hell do Lincoln Riley defenses get that goal line stop on 4 straight plays. It's just not happening. So, that right there is there's many examples, but that one right there, you go, what's the difference with Oklahoma this year? Point to that goal line stand for sure.
If they do it and keep it up and get a little bit better every week as they move forward, because they still have to play, as Craig mentioned, a lot of games. Now, we will get into Baylor, but it's really about Texas Tech that came in with Joey McGuire and company and just buried Baylor. It was, I don't want to say the word is humiliating, but it was absolutely one-sided in every way, shape, or form. And Texas Tech came in. We'll have a former receiver, Rodney Blackshire, join us about 4:30 to give us his take on that. We have a comment from Monterey Baldwin, who was in the doghouse earlier this year, who has actually been a catalyst the last couple of weeks. If there was one last Saturday, I don't think there was, but he was a part of that. And then also Dave Aranda about the last time Baylor has won a home game against an FBS school at McLean Stadium. We will have that and break that down a little bit more at 4 o'clock. We're going to get into that now, but Chandler Morris, Garrett, if you wouldn't mind, Chandler Morris, this is from our buddy Steven Johnson, the Star-Telegram, will be out for a while after getting injured against Iowa State. Great win for the Cyclones. Josh Hoover, who played at Heath High School in Rockwall, will start against BYU on Saturday.
I watched that game the other night. Garrett and I were here, and Iowa State physically beat them up. I mean, they had the Jack Trice uniforms on. It was hopping and Ames, and they were out for blood against TCU. They just, every time that, they got a chance to deliver a punishing hit, they did it. They absolutely, that was a Matt Campbell dream game right there. Everything he likes about the way his team plays when they're at their best, they did that the other night. Running game was really, really effective, and Chandler Morris not being there is going to be tough. TCU, they also run that same offense that Oklahoma does, but they may not have the right personnel for it just yet because they're not moving as fast as you would think. So we'll see what happens with them down the line, but that's a tough loss for a few weeks for them in the midst of the conference season that they're not playing all that great in.
All right, go ahead, Craig.
Well, 4 interceptions are great to have for any football team, and that's what Iowa State had on Saturday off of 3 different TCU throwers. So you had both your quarterbacks and also your wide receiver and J.P. Richardson attempting to pass, and that was picked off. So 4 interceptions. You also had, a great game on the ground for the Cyclones. I feel like with TCU, it's just like, who are they and what are they trying to be and what are they actually good at? And I don't really know because, one week it's like, oh, the defense looks like it's back together. And then, the next week it's maybe not quite as good as you expected. But, yeah, I mean, that was a tail kicking, and that was an impressive showing by Iowa State. With what they went through in the offseason, you just wonder, like, how is this team going to react? And then they kind of start off slow, and you wonder, there's the murmurs about like, hey, has Matt Campbell lost his magic, or is this team still ailing from, what happened with the gambling probe and losing their quarterback, losing their running back and all of that. And you know what? They've just stuck together and now find themselves at 3-3. They're above 500 in conference play. TCU is not a game that I think you circled at the beginning of the year and felt like, oh, well, that's a win. Maybe you thought there was a chance because of what all they lost, but, to have the Frogs roll into town and to, beat them up. I mean, like you said, it was close in the first half, but they, took care of business in that second half. And, just really impressed with Iowa State, just staying the course. Nothing super sexy or fancy about it, just Iowa State football. Like you said, the uniforms, the throwbacks to Jack Trice were pretty cool looking. And, they just had it on Saturday. And TCU, I mean, whether it's turnovers or special teams miscues or average to the quarterback play. Obviously, Chandler Morris is not going to play for a while, as you said. I do think that's a blow, but I don't think that that's like a crushing blow because I don't think he was playing so great that that's like, oh, the whole season's derailed now. But, yeah, they're just out of whack, and I really thought I was wrong. I thought that they'd be able to, use the transfer portal and plug some holes, and not that they would be Max Duggan level good. But you got to remember, too, my perception of Chandler Morris is tainted by the performance against Baylor a couple years ago, where he came in and just looked like Johnny football against them. And so that's what I saw, and that's what's just kind of stuck in my head. But he is not that. He is not that on a week-to-week basis. He is a young quarterback with some flaws who's got a long way to go. And I think that that's shown. I think just TCU in general has shown that, yeah, you can go hit up the transfer portal. But when you're talking about replacing, a once-in-a-decade quarterback and receiver and defensive back and and all this lineman. And your offensive line as much as anything else is probably your biggest issue. Yeah, that's hard. It's easier said than done. And so TCU's learning that lesson right now.
All right, let's look at I just asked the chat room, and then we're going to read a couple of them, and we're going to go to the top 25 and then a couple of points about the top 25. I asked who had the best win. It's kind of a split vote between Oklahoma, Louisville, which we'll get to. In fact, we'll have an analyst, a writer who covers Louisville at 3:45. So that's what the feedback has been. And without question, disgusting ending for Miami, and we'll get to that too, when they could have just taken a knee. How come somebody on the offense didn't overrule, just take the Van Dyke, take a knee, running back, take the handoff, go down. Somebody stop and go, Coach, what are we doing? But that was almost Baylor UNLV-like, except that was a 90-something yard fumble return that ended the game. In this case, who am I thinking about? Still had to make plays to win the game. Haynes King had to make plays for Georgia Tech.
I don't know what is worse than 99-yard fumble return to end a game when you haven't. I mean, and because the UNLV thing really stung for Baylor in that they didn't win at Floyd Casey Stadium all that much, and the fans were about to see a win for an actual win early in the season.
1999, by the way, we're reflected on that game.
And then that looks really bad because it was, there was no time left on the clock. I mean, the time ran out as the UNLV player was sprinting down the field by himself. And then that one, though, man, it's not the first time he's done it either. He did it against Stanford when he was at Oregon 5 years ago, and they lost a game in overtime because of it. So he obviously didn't learn anything in those 5 years, and that was painful to watch.
Greg, you and I were sharing back and forth during the postgame as far as the postgame presser, and you sent me that video. Haynes King is a kid we covered. His dad's a local high school coach, but that was remarkable.
Yeah, I was in the post game there at McLean Stadium and just saw some of the chatter erupting and caught it at the end just in time to see what had happened. And I credit Haynes King for making a couple of really big time throws and getting the job done there at the end. His receiver having to make the catch and make sure that he slid in the end zone, like the slide. If you watch it there at the end, it's like, man, if he had slid about a yard short, then that could have been a nightmare scenario. But he got in. And I think the best view is not from the actual ESPN broadcast. It's from the fan cams out there because you can truly hear the gasps of absolute horror as Georgia Tech scores there because they just cannot believe that had happened. And I wouldn't have believed it if I was them either. I think everybody was dumbfounded with whatever Mario Cristobal was trying to do. And I know that there was some calling back to, a previous situation at Oregon. But, I mean, that was so bad that it led to people feeling like the game was fixed. I mean, that's what it led to because it was so dumb and so out of the norm to make you had to have a break from reality to think that was a good idea in any way, shape, or form. So the only way to explain it was so bad, the only way to explain it was to think that he had money on the game. Mm-hmm. That's how bad of a decision it was. So, yeah, I mean, if that's the point you've reached where people are speculating whether or not you're betting money on the outcome because of how dumb of a decision you made, then that takes a long look in the mirror, and I still don't know how you really explain that. I don't. I mean, that's an all-time dumb move at the end of the game, and yeah, it's going to live on for, a lifetime. That's never going to go. That's going to be on every Miami lowlight video ever made from here on out with yakety sax in the background and whatever else. I mean, yeah, just pure insanity there, and a great win for Georgia Tech that they really, had to win it at the end, but they got very fortunate, obviously.
So here is the top 25. Georgia, we have suggested that maybe they're bored. Ask Kentucky if Georgia is bored.
Not anymore.
They devoured them. It was not close. They devoured Kentucky, and Kentucky's a pretty damn good football team and solid that doesn't beat themselves. But Georgia, they all of a sudden got hungry, and they just crushed, again, the Wildcats. Michigan remains just hammered Minnesota. Ohio State early on against Maryland, a little shaky, but they win. There's Florida State bumping up a notch, and then Oklahoma basically almost flips positions where UT not quite as low as OU was at 12. OU now 5. Then Penn State and 7 and 8 played each other. This week, we'll have a note on that. Texas at 9 and USC escaped with their lives. Late Saturday night against Arizona. And then Bama just kind of sitting out there doing their thing. And Louisville jumps up to 14. And then you see the rest of the top 25. Kansas remains inside the top 25 at 23.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley continues to have a problem on defense. And then they had to come back in that game, too.
Oh, I know.
They were down a bunch. And, that was a Caleb Williams special, on the comeback, and the defense made the play when they had to. But that's 2 weeks in a row where their defense has been completely kind of just off the stick. And, nothing's really changed for Lincoln Riley. He's got to address that if he wants to, win a conference in the Pac-12, much less or in the Big Ten next year. Now, if he's gonna really win titles, they've got to do something about tackling the guys in front of them more often than not.
Yeah, I mean, he's been able to maneuver through it pretty okay up until this point, but to win bigger championships than conferences, yeah, you're right. He's going to have a more shored-up defense, and it might cost them a Pac-12 title this year. It very well might, because they are not the best-looking team. They're not even the second best-looking team, or maybe even the third best-looking team. Offensively, obviously, that's a different story, but overall, yeah, there's still a major issue there. I don't know what you do mid-season. I know that it's got a lot of USC fans up in arms and worried a bit about the trajectory of where they're heading, particularly on that side of the ball, and how that's going to hurt them potentially overall. So, yeah, that's just – I mean, if I was him, I would just be so annoyed by the fact that remains a thing at this point of, like, when do you just finally have enough of hearing, I know you don't listen to the outside chatter, but at some point it was like Iowa. It's like at some point, like, you have to do something, right? Or are we just doing Groundhog Day? Because, I mean, how long do you want to keep going on, and how many times do you need that defense to fall on its face before you go, you know what, you guys are right. Alex Grinch may not be the guy. Like, I mean, what is it going to take? Is it going to take them losing a spot in the playoff or losing the Pac-12 championship game to somebody because of their defense? I don't know, but it's maddening if you're a Lincoln Riley fan who's followed him from stop to stop, because it's Groundhog Day, like I said. And, yeah, that defense is going to probably cost them at some point, but I'll tell you what, if it doesn't, it will be because of that superstar quarterback who is just an amazing football player, Patrick Mahomes-esque, and just the way he has an ability to make something out of nothing or make things happen that you don't feel like you've ever really seen all that often, if ever, on a football field. So, yeah, he's incredibly special, and because of that, they'll always have a chance. But because of that defense, yeah, they're not as good as they should be, and that's going to continue to be a negative with that team overall in their profile.
All right, we have Alexis Cubit at 3:45. You want to break here and come back with Gonzaga, the Big 12?
Yeah, let's do that.
And also, again, a note on the Pac-12 with Oregon State, Washington State. Later in the show, Dan Murphy of ESPN on a story about the NCAA trying to move forward with giving schools and programs more control of NIL. That will be at 5:30, along with our other guests, Phil Bennett, J.J. Joe. We'll also hear from Rodney Blackshire, played at Texas Tech, and Paul's Top 5 at the end of the show. We'll discuss more of what Baylor's postgame was like, very much like a funeral. Monterey Baldwin, as Craig mentioned, with some very interesting truth serum. And then Dave Aranda on a question about Baylor at home at McLean Stadium. We appreciate you. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace this week, redfish fillet at $18.99 a pound. That's a part of their butcher shop, a full-service butcher shop, full-service bakery. German sausage at $2.99 a pound. Chicken drumsticks at 99 cents a pound. Smoked pork tenderloin at $4.50 a pound, and boneless pork butt at $2.05 a pound. They have tri-tip at about $5 a pound at $4.99, and then top sirloin steak at $7.25 a pound. Bone-in select ribeye, bone-in choice ribeye steaks, $10.50 and $12.50 a pound, and beef tallow at 50 cents, per pound. The bakery is there, the butcher shop is there, all the little things you need, the knickknacks from a regular grocery store, plus marinades and seasonings and more. They even have, and I've had this a couple of times, these packages that are kind of a soup mix that you got to do yourself, but it's really good, even including the potato soup that I had one time and enjoyed that. It's Waco Custom Marketplace, cold beer, cold wine, and what you need for tailgate season at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend, but I tell you what, boys, you better think again, 'cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
During Jeep Adventure Days, save big on 2023 Jeep models like the Grand Cherokee Limited with values up to $5,500. Or 10% off MSRP on new Jeep Gladiators on all trim levels. Or 10% off MSRP on a new Jeep Compass at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
There's so much to get to. I got a couple of nuggets from the media blitz. We'll get to that. We'll have more time to look at the Big 12 overall today. And, of course, a lot of guests that we have between now and 6 o'clock. But also this story that Seth Davis covers college basketball. Brett McMurphy on his Twitter feed, the Big 12 seriously considering Gonzaga in 24-25, telling Action Network HQ. First reported by Seth Davis. Decision may occur in a couple of weeks. Watch, which would be a major coup for the Big 12 when it comes to basketball. Gonzaga, though, would probably have to look at taking less revenue because it would be men's basketball, you would think, only. Your thoughts? We've discussed Gonzaga. We did quite a bit during the entire early part of this year. They then got pushed aside like UConn did, and now it appears as if they still might tinker here with Gonzaga.
I think this is Brett Yormark obviously is trying to build up the basketball side of this because, you know, even with what he's done with what they've done with football and the whole conference and making it 16 teams and adding the Pac-12 teams that they've added and everything they've done to make it a coast-to-coast league, they still are going to run into the problem in the short term and maybe even the long term that they don't have the brands that the other leagues do. especially the Big Ten and the SEC. So how do you increase your value in other places? You make the best basketball conference, and I do think that the Big 12 will want to do this because, one, he delivered exactly on what he said he was going to do with expanding the league, and when these things come out, they don't usually kind of go away. The Big 12 has been very intentional about what information we know about expansion, and then, once they figure out the details about how do you have a 17-team conference tournament, does the best team get a bye? What if there are two teams that, are the same? Do you take the bottom three out? I don't know. Whatever it's going to be, that'll be interesting. But I'm for them adding Gonzaga in basketball, if not just to make the basketball season that much more interesting.
Well, if we didn't have enough to talk about, having all this start to swirl again is certainly, some extra salt and pepper on what's already a pretty good meal because, we know how crazy realignment talk can get, and we know how much, the Big 12 is, involved in trying to find any way imaginable to, increase their product value and just, the spotlight on the conference, and they're willing to do whatever. And a couple of months ago, Brett Yormark flat out said, we're done at 16. That was the commissioner said, we're done at 16. Had mentioned having the overtures, with others like Gonzaga, but just, acknowledged that it didn't go anywhere and that they got what they wanted when they got the packed schools. But you never say never, and it is what it is when it comes to a landscape that I don't think anybody really has a great feel for where it's going ultimately and what that's going to look like or when that's going to look like, I think is the biggest question as much as anything else. But I got to be honest with you guys. I'm not that thrilled by this news. I'm not super excited about, Gonzaga's joining the Big 12. It's not a knock on the Zags. I think that they would be a great addition as far as a basketball school and other sports as well. For those that may wonder, yes, this would be, other sports too, based on what I read, obviously not football because they don't have a program, but they'd play, I guess, in most of the other sports, if not all of them. But I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it'll make for some, obviously some good basketball matchups when they play Kansas and Baylor and whoever else. But this doesn't have me just over the moon as far as, that was the key to unlocking all of this extra potential. And, I saw this comment made, I think the first time around, and I think it bears repeating now is, is Gonzaga guaranteed to be a basketball dynasty for the next 10 years? How much of this is a short-term move just for hey, let's see Mark Few these next couple of years and what that turns into and what that adds. And, then after that, we'll worry about wherever the landscape is and what that looks like in the end. I don't know what those discussions are like behind the scenes. But, yeah, it leans into the schools, into the conference's basketball identity. It adds another very quality program and valuable program. But it doesn't get me super excited, to be honest with you, because honestly, I would kind of like things to settle down for a little bit and just sort of take in what's already happened. And, before we could even really get into the the four new schools, then it was the whole four corner situation. Now that hasn't even died down just yet. They're still in the middle of their last season with their old conference, and now it's and here's now Gonzaga, and then whatever potentially comes from the pack situation that we're about to talk about. And I don't know. It's just a little bit too chaotic. I know it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about, but I just wish you could kind of take your breath. But I understand from their point of view, they can't really probably afford to do that. And obviously the coast-to-coast mission of Brett Yormark, has been out there and been very public for a while, and they're not quite that way if you look at it, and I guess this would help establish that a bit more. I would take it as, good news for anybody out west, in particular the two we're about to talk about, as potentially a good sign. I don't know if it means anything in the long run, but yeah, I'm just that's cool. I'm not anti-Gonzaga, but I'm also not super over the moon about what that means.
I don't have a feeling for this either way. I just know that they already have brands in basketball. Even with losing Oklahoma and Texas, they've got brands in basketball. So this would be at least another, and they again, maybe just wanting to kind of stay ahead of the curve, or at least always trying to have something in the oven, so to speak, or on the grill. And so there you are with that. Now, this Will Crick story, and it's a lot to do with Pac-12, Oregon State, Washington State. We have Alexis Cubit, who covers Louisville, coming up just around the corner.
Yeah, the Pac-12, Oregon State, and Washington State have agreed to...
That's not the right tweet.
The one I sent you from John Wilner, Garrett. They have agreed to mediation with their preliminary injunction hearing looming next month. So that means that all the stuff that we were kind of hoping to come out in open court will, at least for now, be behind closed doors, which would have been fascinating to hear. Everybody kind of air the dirty laundry of the Pac-12, but now they're going to mediate this, which doesn't mean that they're going to resolve it. That doesn't mean that it's going to get resolved. They could get mediation and then all get in a fight, but it does probably mean, and it's one more step towards the unlikelihood of Oregon State and Washington State winning all the money. Like, the money will be distributed around. Like, there's going to be some, they're not going to walk away with $160 million apiece, as, theoretically they could if they won all the points in their lawsuit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a new door open that was previously closed, and I think a lot of people would like that door to remain closed so that there could be open discovery in this lawsuit, and you could get all of the demons and all the dirty laundry out into the open. I think that would be ideal for the general public out there. But if you're Oregon State and Washington State and you're trying to just get this over with, I could see where this is more appealing. And certainly if you're those other schools and you're trying to move on to the Big 10, to the Big 12, to wherever, I don't think that you're wanting the skeletons out of the closet or for everybody to be able to have every little detail of how all of this went down, because that might not go in your favor. So, this is very interesting. And, the big, dates being circled were about a month from now. So to have them out today talking about mediation, I think is, it's very interesting and juicy news. Like, to what extent is it juicy news? I don't quite know. What's the timeline on this? I mean, I don't know about that either, but the fact that they're, going into mediation, I think is definitely something of note. And it's just a shame, like Paul said, that it's not going to lead now to getting all of having the big fight that you could possibly have and try to air all of the dirty laundry. But, if it results in everybody getting what they're wanting, moving on, I think we saw that with the Big 12 in Oklahoma and Texas, is like the idea would be like you get them for every penny that they can possibly spend, even if it's not going to bankrupt them, but you just want to make them pay, right? That's what you would like, but that's not also the most feasible, realistic, or financially sensible thing to do. I can understand from Oregon State and Washington State's point of view why they would want to get this done as well.
Clear it, move on, find out what's next for you, and at least you'll know what kind of money you have in return for being the two that are still there within the Pac-2. All right, when we come back, Alexis Cubit on Louisville's win, because, they're playing well and jumped up in the top 25 polls. Then Monterey Baldwin with some thoughts after the loss to Texas Tech at just after 4 o'clock. And more from you on Washington and Oregon. You saw a note. We're going to put it back up in the next hour between Washington and Oregon. And how long has it been since two teams that highly ranked in the Pac-12 met? This is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace, just off of 35 in Waco, is where you can get an MRI to find out what is hurting you. And if your doctor wants a better look at your back, your shoulder, maybe your lower back, down near your lower spine that creates other issues, tingling in your legs, or something's wrong, you're going to find out what it is. Because Ideal MRI and their state-of-the-art technology MRI machine, that's what it does. It's done that for me for a couple of different reasons. It's done that for many people. And it's also a place that saves you a ton of money. $497 or less every single time. That's or less every single time, instead of the average of an MRI, about $1,100. I remember doing an MRI several years ago before I even knew about Ideal MRI, and it was a big chunk of money, but I had to get it done. I needed to get something looked at. I got the results, but I also lost a lot of money in my bank account. You don't have to do that. You get the results, and you spend a little bit of money. $497 at idealmri.com.
The right call can make all the difference on and off the field. I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgin Ford. When it's time for a new car, truck, or SUV, Bird Colgin Ford is the right call. Come check out our award-winning lineup of best-selling models in their class, like the Mustang, Explorer, Expedition, F-150, and Super Duty. Make the right call for your next vehicle at Bird Colgin Ford. Bird Colgin Ford proudly supports Baylor Athletics. Sic 'em Bears.
At
Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by River Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Alexis Cubit, Courier Journal Sports, covers Louisville. And what a nice weekend it was for them. They're jumping up into the top 25 higher and higher. Alexis joins Paul Craig, and I'm David Smoak. Alexis, thanks for your time as always. Is this maybe earlier the success than people might have thought?
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. I mean, Jeff Brom came in and talked about, he doesn't want this to be a rebuilding situation. He wants to win now. And I think, of course, fans kind of rally behind that. But when you look at it and you think, okay, you're bringing in 26 transfers. You've got, literally almost half of your team being new, including freshmen. I don't know that anyone really expected a 6-0 start. I mean, the schedule was favorable just because, you don't have Florida State, you don't have Clemson, you don't have North Carolina, but I don't know that anyone really expected it to go this way. So it definitely has been a shocker. You kind of wonder with the NC State game, like, all right, they're going on the road. Carter Finley's a tough place to play, but you come out of there with a, close win, and then you get, Notre Dame at home, and, they just had that crazy win against Duke, and you kind of think, okay, maybe this is the one, and they go out there and, turn a 6.5-point underdog into a 13-point win. So, I definitely think that it's a kind of a storybook type of story, with Jeff Brom coming back, but no, it's definitely far exceeded my expectations to this point.
I kind of felt like just watching some of the fans in the game the other night, it's like they're yelling like, see, we told you, Louisville athletic department, just bring him back. It'll all be better if you just bring him here.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't know if you guys ever saw, but on Twitter there was the Bring Brom Home guy. that was this Twitter account that literally, like, I think every game last year was just like, you know, anti-Satterfield, pro-Brom type stuff. And this guy was getting requests up the creek when, you know, Brom finally got hired because he'd been like the driving force behind this campaign, had a whole hashtag and everything. So, no, yeah, I mean, I know someone who told me, you know, last December, you know, just wait, like, this is going to be something really good. And I was like, all right, I'm going to hold you to it. Like, please do. And so I texted him Saturday night. I was like, well, you were right. So, no, I think there's definitely one of those moments where, you know, fans are excited, and definitely a good move by Josh Hood to go ahead and get that deal done.
Alexis, I comb box scores every week and become pretty familiar with various names. And Jawar Jordan there for Louisville is a guy who stands out every single time. Can you just speak to his abilities, what you've seen, and how impactful he is for this Cardinals offense?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, Jawar's story is really interesting because, you know, he came here from Syracuse, and then, you know, he sat behind Jalen Mitchell and Tyron Evans last year and didn't really get an opportunity until late in the season because, you know, Jalen transferred, Travion transferred. They had a bunch of guys transferring, and Tyon obviously going to the league. But, I mean, he had really good Fenway Bowl game, offensive MVP, and then, you know, you come into this season, you pretty much figure he's going to be the starter, but he's really kind of taken off. He's so fast. He's just so fast. Mm-hmm. You know, all he has to do is beat that one guy, and he's off to the races. And I think he's got like can't even remember how many, you know, was it 70+ yard plays, and just an incredible talent that was a little bit of a hidden gem, but has really kind of come into his own and been a go-to player for Louisville this season. It's been fun to watch because he's kind of a quiet kid, but then you watch him play, and he's just so electric. And so definitely been one of the highlights of his offense so far.
There's a note from the Media Blitz that with Louisville's win against Notre Dame, Louisville has defeated an AP top 10 opponent back-to-back years for the first time in program history. Last year they beat Wake Forest and Sam Hartman, and this year they beat Notre Dame and Sam Hartman.
With Sam Hartman, yep. Yeah, you know, I don't know what it is. Either Louisville really doesn't like Sam Hartman, or Sam Hartman really doesn't like playing in that stadium, but it's just not good for him. I think it was 5 sacks last year, 5 sacks this year, a couple turnovers this year. I think it was like 4 interceptions last year. They just found a way to really get in his head. And, you know, you kind of wonder because he did switch programs, different systems and all those things, but no, it was still the same. So I think after that, I mean, literally the first drive, Quincy Riley gets the interception. You kind of get the feeling that, okay, it's going to be a Wake Forest game. The score wasn't quite as bad, but I mean, same result. So, yeah, I don't think Sam Hartman will be back in Louisville anytime soon.
Yeah, I think also like the next time he hears a Jack Harlow song, he's going to throw his iPod at the wall.
Right.
But
exactly. Jack was probably one of the ones heckling him too. So
yeah, he was right there in the end zone the whole game. Alexis, just moving forward, again, their schedule is. They got the great deal that North Carolina still undefeated, FSU still undefeated, and none of those 3 teams play each other. How much of that is a little bit of a motivation for Louisville to not only take this big win over Notre Dame, but to kind of keep it rolling and avoid traps along the way? I know they play Miami, but they just had the most humiliating moment in the last 20 years in college football.
Yeah, no, definitely. So the thing is, with Louisville right now, and you talked about this, and shameless plug, but I'll have a story out tomorrow about it. But, you know, when you look back at Jeff Brom's career, he's won, really big games before. He was part of Illinois' 6-0 start. He was on that coaching staff, but then Illinois lost 6 straight. And then after every top 5 win that he's had, they lost the next game. So, it's as impressive as beating Notre Dame has been. I think right now it's a matter of, okay, how will they respond to this? It is the perfect trap game. And they've won 1 game against, Wofford, and then have lost the last 4 games. They're, got a new quarterback and moving some things around. So this, I think, would be, it will say, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I think this game will say more to me than last week's, because you want success, but you want just that sustainability. And so I think that's going to be really important to build that against Pitt. They don't have to buy them. They have Duke. yeah, I mean, and then they have the 2 Virginia schools, which, there's that, before they go to Miami. So I think you just kind of have to keep building on those wins and making sure that you're at your best when you do play Miami, because, yeah, I mean, the ACC championship game is well within reach right now. And, everybody's starting to figure out what those tiebreakers would look like. And then you go to, the ACC opponents. And so may not be the best for Louisville right now, considering the opponents that they do face. But, I mean, yeah, it's definitely on the mind, and will be important for them to keep rolling.
Alexis, last thing for me is that obviously things have simmered down, but they're still there when it comes to the ACC, and some schools unhappy. Some schools are just kind of looking around of, okay, wait a minute, what's going to happen with us if, in fact, the ACC is the next one to have any kind of turmoil? Where does Louisville stand in all of this? How would this all affect them?
I think for them, adding the schools with SMU and Cal Stanford was good, because it just helps them kind of, I guess, strengthen the league. I don't know if they really have a dog in the fight at this point. They're not really at the level of the Clemsons and the FSUs yet, but they're not exactly, Georgia Tech to say. So I think they're kind of in that mid-pack where I don't know that they necessarily gain anything from, I don't know. It's just a weird situation because they don't have that brand, but I think they're building up to that, and that's why it's so important for them to have or get that success in football so that they can kind of elevate themselves. But I think right now, if the ACC were to fold, it would definitely be detrimental for them. So I think that their success largely depends on the success of the conference and trying to keep that going.
Right now, what's more important, Louisville football with Braum at 6-0 or Louisville basketball, because that's usually the case?
I think basketball has been put on hold for a little bit, which is crazy to say in this city. But I mean, you look at last year where they won, 4 games in men's basketball, and right now, football sitting at 6-0. So, there's. I think it's safe to say that for maybe, I don't know, I don't say first time because 2013 was really big, but then they won national championship in basketball. But I think at least for one of the first times in Kentucky sports history, you got football kind of, at least in Louisville, football is a little bit elevated right now.
Good. The hometown hero, right, is there with Jeff Braum. Thanks for your time, Alexis. We appreciate you anytime.
Actually, one last thing I want to say, because I didn't say this last time. Congratulations to Paul. So excited for you and happy for you, and wish you all the best with you in your new wife.
Oh, thank you, Alexis. That means a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I forgot to say that last time, but I was like, have to do that.
That's sweet as heck. It's just so sweet.
One day you'll have to meet Amanda. Just so I get Alexis's official stamp of approval. So
right, my invitation got lost in the mail, though.
Wow! And that's a great way to end it, right there. Alexis Cubit, the Courier Journal News, with us on Louisville, Courier Journal Sports on Louisville, and their win against Notre Dame. When we come back, Baylor and where they go next, along with the entire Big 12. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicalOT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the man you want to be, need to be, used to be, with a simple blood test. Contact them, Petty Clinical OT. Contact them with an email or a phone number. They then, once you do, will set you up with blood work. You go get your blood work, they'll take care of it, and then Dr. Petty will get your results, look at them, and it's more than just testosterone. He'll look at everything else too. But if your testosterone level appears to be low or is very low, he will give you the option to get in the program to increase your testosterone level so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be. Dr. Kent Petty and staff at PettyClinicalOT.com.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries, or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Baylor is in a bad place, and Texas Tech just made sure they stayed there. Despite the comeback that was dramatic in Orlando, nothing changed from who they have been most of this entire year. And they were beaten up, battered, and basically put to sleep pretty quick. They were. Texas Tech was really good, and I love their running back. He's fantastic. Taj Brooks is just like trying to tackle a fire hydrant who's not just a bulky kid. He was fantastic. I said before the game, whoever ended up winning the running game would win the game. Texas Tech won that by a landslide. So, Monterey Baldwin, who last year was pretty good for them, and is a local kid. He played down in Catalina, about an hour southwest of Waco. He didn't do much early in the year. There was a lot of questions. What's wrong with him? Where is he? And come to find out, he was kind of in the doghouse. And his football coach at Catalina, Shoemaker, even said that Monterey had to kind of get some things together. Now he's one of the few players that you can think will make a play. After the game, he was asked a couple of different times, what is wrong with his football team?
Monterey, we'll make sure you said everyone has to start playing hard. You're 6 games into the season. Why would that be the case? Why would that not already be the case? Where was the momentum from last week? What's going on with this team?
People were sitting around waiting for their buddy to make the play. When they need to make the play, that play, like, you got to treat every play like that, because you never know when your opportunity is going to come. You never know when the ball may pop out and you do the backside cutoff and you can pick it up. Like, it's just stuff like that, and people aren't doing that every play. We do it here and there, but it's not every play, and that's why I say we got to be consistent with it. With it being the 6th game of the season, I don't really know why, but I feel like people are just like here for the ride, and that's not what we're here for. We're here to win games, and people have to step up. People have to be leaders. People have to take accountability and just stuff like that. So we have to. It's just some growing up we have to do.
People are here for the ride.
Yeah, this sounds a little bit like what was going on at Texas for a while, right? With people came in and they're there to be. They like being called a college football player, but they don't necessarily like being a college football player, right? Everything that goes with it. And, look, to hear that from a player, I think that's good news for Baylor, that you have people who can recognize that the problem is like, how do you fix it? How do you get guys who have not been previously invested to get excited about a season that's now 2-4 and fighting yourself out of a hole? Like that's going to be really tough for them moving forward, because they, it's hard to see what's going to change, right? I said on the post-game show the other night, look, you could put almost 20 of 22 starters up for grabs on either side of the ball and just see what you got. And there are some guys that obviously would start no matter what, but just to maybe light a fire under the starters so they play a little bit better, the guys who are established. And, right now, I don't think anybody along the offensive line is, earning the scholarship, right? I mean, I say that, in partially jest, but my gosh, the offensive line has played so bad. You're trying to get your quarterback healthy and playing better, and within 10 snaps every game, he's been hit 4 times already. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you expect to, sustain any, like, whether it's Blake Shapen, Sawyer Robertson, RJ Martinez, or
the Wildcat,
or anybody, like, if they're getting hit that often, like almost every third play, it is hard to sustain that.
Yeah, as Travis from the website pointed out, and I think a couple of other people, it's not a great sign when the guy who was in the doghouse is now suddenly one of your big leaders, halfway through the season. So, that's concerning. I guess I shake my head sometimes when we start talking about Dave Aranda and this team and what they say in the postgame, because we've heard it all before. We hear it every single week after every single loss that have mounted since going back to last year. And I didn't ever sign up for a psychology or psychiatry course, but maybe we need to just have some insight onto how to cover this team, because that's what it turns into. I mean, it's just not a good look that they don't seem to have the answers, that they don't seem to be getting all that much better, that they can't carry momentum, that they can't execute at a basic level in many ways, that they don't have, better leadership, that a guy like a Monterey Baldwin could be in the doghouse and all of a sudden he's like the top guy speaking about others not playing up to a certain level. It's just a mess, and, credit to Texas Tech. They're a fine football team. I think maybe when all is said and done the second half of the year, that they're a pretty good football team. Remains to be seen, but they came into Waco and did their thing and left no doubts about who the better team was on Saturday night and who's the better team right now and who will be the better team moving forward, because there's no sign from this Baylor football team that they're going to just turn this around. They're not making a bowl game. They're not going 4-2 down the stretch with the schedule that they have and based on what we've seen so far. So I'm sorry, but I'm just a little sick and tired, and I know we have to do it, but I'm just a little sick and tired of having to have a psychology degree to try and figure out what's wrong with this team and read through the lines and what it means behind the scenes. And it's ridiculous. I mean, it's just ridiculous that this is still the conversation 6 weeks into the season. Is like, well, is everything good behind the scenes, or are the coaches fine, or is where's the leadership? I mean, what are we talking about here? So, yeah, I think it's a bad sign that that's still a conversation at this point, and there doesn't really seem to be any answers that are arriving either. And so hopefully this bye week is a good breather for them, and that's what they needed, and they can all refocus and reorganize and all of that. But, I mean, the apathy levels are setting in. That wasn't like Tech brought some massive crowd to Waco either. They were kind of feeling it. They were kind of like, this is sort of a big game, whatever. And they had a good representation, but it wasn't like in years past. And Baylor didn't have a great showing either, because I think a lot of people thought that, they were going to get duped again. That last week in Orlando was a mirage, and it was a mirage because we saw what followed that. And you know what? They're also tired of showing up on Saturday nights or to home games and leaving not just disappointed, not just with losses, but getting your butts kicked at home like you did on Saturday night. So, yeah, we can get into all the philosophy and all that stuff, and that's fine, and it makes for some interesting discussions at times. But, bottom line, they're just not a good football team. They're not very well coached in some ways. They can't execute very well at a lot of times. And I know you can point to, well, they're young or they're this or they're that, and that all is fine. But the bottom line is they're just not very good. And that's the most important thing, is they're not very good, and they don't really look like they're getting that much better, because that was a step back. That was not a stand where you are, and at least you took that step forward and you stayed there. That wasn't another step forward. That was a step right back to where you were before Orlando. So, yeah, we can talk about the culture and all those types of things, but whatever's going on, it's leading to performance after performance after performance where they're leaving a bad taste in your mouth.
From Smokey Bear, why does it take a player and not the coach to speak truth? Are you listening, CDA, which is Coach Dave Aranda? Also, from a couple of others, Kim, every Baylor fan forgot and ignored why they lost to Texas State. We're behind 35-7 to UCF. It wasn't just Tech who's been humiliating them. Also, Zachary, that's the safe response from Monterey, saying there are major players who are slacking at all levels. Like last year, people telling me Spencer Sanders was more interested in girls and money than playing football.
I do think,
David Gibson, thank you, Craig Smoak, in capital letters.
I do think, though, when you have, like, I remember asking Grayson during a podcast of, like, what's this team's mantra? And he's like, person over player. And I was like, really? That's the motto? And then I was like, okay, like, I kind of understand it. But as beneficial as that is for these young men and their lives moving forward, that's all great. That's fantastic. But that's also not the point of this whole thing. The point of the whole thing is to do that and to have them mature as men and become better men and fathers and sons and everything moving forward. But you also have to win football games. And they're not doing that other part. And so person over player is great. And you can do that when you're winning games and you've got the leeway to do that. But when you're doing that and you're losing games and then you're wondering why guys are just along for the ride, well, because you're more than a football. You know, like I feel like that message gets mixed, or it's like, well, it doesn't really matter how we perform because it's all about how we develop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and so I think that kind of clouds the messaging to where it's good from a human perspective, but from a football perspective, I feel like maybe the way that it's received by some people is like, yeah, we lost, but at least we're doing the right things off the field and we're improving. And it's like the fan base is screaming like, yeah, we like that part of it, but we need you to be good on the field for us to be here to support it and enjoy it and have the things that you want to have.
Retired stockbroker Craig Smoak, tough love time. I asked Dave Aranda when I got into the recruitment and who they were recruiting and how was the NIL affecting them one way or the other. And he mentioned something about how they had to be they had to look at certain individuals. But I don't like to interrupt him, but I did say, but don't you have to win? Do you guys remember that? But don't you need to win? And he said yes. But yeah, that's kind of like, it's all nice, but you got to have some turds.
Well,
you got to have some people who are on the edge. You don't want anyone to like put your name in the headlines because of bad stuff, but you've got to have guys who have an edge when they're on the football field who can be nice young men when they're walking around on campus.
I think the other thing is like, Craig, to follow up on your person over player thing, that's great, but the fans don't get to go to those meetings.
Right.
I mean, they're not in that holistic spiritual enrichment program. Like, that's not what they came to see. So I think it's an awesome goal to have, but they've got to get players who can win in the league. And right now, they don't have a roster of guys who can do that. And it is painfully obvious week after week. And they had the Big 12 title in their hands and a Sugar Bowl title and the best season in school history. And granted, NIL coming around right after that and them not being ready for it certainly was out of their control. Like that, they're not the only school who's, kind of trying to wade through and find the best way for them individually to do it, because there's not like a salary cap, there's not league rules. You just kind of have to make up your own way and figure out what works for you in your market, in your school. But they have not capitalized in any way off of that, and each game feels like two steps further away.
Somebody just mentioned the Big 12 championship and Sugar Bowl seemed like now 10 years ago.
I said that this morning. It just feels so long ago that they did that. It just was so long that, it was 2 years ago. They should, the quarterback who won that game is still their quarterback now. But everything else has changed, and they made the right decision to change the offense when they did in 2021 for the personnel that they had. But then they have not recruited guys who fit it well now. And I told this to you guys earlier as well. The reliable, violent offense is not reliable. It's certainly not violent, and it's barely an offense.
Yeah. Ryan, not a great sign for Baylor when it's the same institutional problems talking about within the program. They said were going on behind the scenes last year that Aranda discussed throughout the year about the disconnect. You fire a defensive coordinator because of maybe the way he coaches or what he does or what he says to players, and that hasn't worked out.
Well, here's the other thing is you can talk, and I like I said, I think the person over player thing is valid. I don't think you bring in a bunch of future jailbirds just to win football games.
No.
I'm not saying that either, but like the lack of an edge, I wonder where that could be coming from. I mean, you're basically telling, with the whole messaging, I feel like that's where sometimes it gets lost is like, well, we got blown out, but at least we're good people. That's kind of how it feels. And it's like, yeah, that's good, but that's not real. Like, that's not how it's also supposed to work either. Like, there's got to be a middle ground there. So, yeah, you don't take just a bunch of punks to win games. You do as best you can to have good people, but, like, there also has to be, like, that edge that's established as well. And so I think that kind of gets lost maybe sometimes with the person over player. I don't know. I'm just trying to find reasons to explain this, quite frankly. But, yeah, it's kind of the same issues. And, the thing about it is we can get all excited about the young players, and I know somebody else has pointed this out, but in this era, Caden Jenkins is probably going to, like, LSU next year. Mm-hmm. I mean, Monterey Baldwin's playing for freaking Texas Tech next year. That's the reality of it. Like, it's great. Yeah, you've got young players. And if you go, well, look, you just need time for them to mature. Okay, cool. You just need a little bit of time to grow up. Okay, cool. That was great 5 years ago when you knew they would be here no matter what, unless they got themselves kicked off the team. Nowadays, they can up and leave whenever they want to. So you can't rely on the fact that you're going to have Caden Jenkins as a junior with Tevin Williams and all these other guys as the secondary is going to be a hole in 3 years and it's going to be dominant. You can't rely on that. I'm sure that some of those guys are already getting DMs about people interested in where they're going to go. So you can't maintain it the same way you used to. It's a year-by-year business now, and they clearly haven't shown that they're super well equipped to deal with the year-by-year nature of this at this point. And the positives that you want to hold on to don't even play in this scenario anymore because it's not a 4 years and let guys grow business anymore. It is a year-to-year, and so even what you have, you're not even guaranteed to have, and that's what's super alarming because what's the pull to stay here? Person over player? To some maybe, but that's just not going to get the job done and the job being a great coach off the field, but also winning games on the field.
Well, they did something right with Monterey, but unfortunately it's not reaching everybody else. From Kim Coulter, Super Chat, thank you. What coach survives 3 losing seasons out of 4? The Big 12 championship was a complete anomaly. Baylor can do better. They did play for one back in 2019, did not win it. Can do better, in my opinion. Now, Dave Aranda, as we kind of close out this discussion, and there's nothing seems to be better. The offense, it looks hard to gain 3 yards. It looks hard to even throw the ball past the first down marker. 3rd and 7 seems like 3rd down and 17. So the last time they won a game, by the time they host Iowa State in 3 weekends, the last time that they won a home game against an FBS opponent was Kansas, here in Waco. And it will be a full year since that happened when they host Iowa State. In fact, maybe more than that. I asked that question for Dave Aranda just to kind of wonder, does he even realize that? Dave, by the time you play your next home game, it will have been over a year since you beat an FBS program. Mm-hmm. Is that hard to fathom? I'm talking about at home.
Right. No,
Kansas last year.
Yes. No, I appreciate that. We're working on just with this particular team, trying to improve and be the best that we can. I appreciate the question. I think those are things that I think if we can get this team figured out and get our work ethic, to continue to push to improve and get the execution better on the field, I believe that will take care of itself.
I don't see the execution improving. I don't see that much improvement, despite what was the phenomenal comeback against UCF. I don't know the answer. Everyone wants to fire somebody, but How many of you have also been fired, and what did that feel like? It's easy to do that, though. You're a fan. You want somebody else to be your football coach. You want something that is at least different. Gerald Joyner. Craig, yep, they're going to leave. I feel like I can see it, Caden Jenkins' eyes, that he's not happy with what's going on. From Darling Deb, they're not great, but they're good enough to win games if our offense did anything. She's talking about complimenting the defense. Our offense keeps our defense on the field the majority of the game.
Well, the offensive line absolutely stinks. That's the problem with the offense. Blake Shapen came back and immediately got hit, 35 times the other night? I mean...
Yeah, he got beat up. He's gotten beat up.
It was embarrassing, that effort offensively, starting with the line. No run game to speak of because they couldn't block anybody. Passing game, actually 300-plus yards. Y'all realize that? They threw 300 yards in the air.
Yep.
And it didn't even feel like it because your quarterback was too busy on every running play or every drop back getting hit most of the time and still managed 300 yards. So it's not like the offense is completely neutered, but when you have no run game, those 300 yards don't really matter unless you're hitting big plays. And quite frankly, outside of Monterey Baldwin and the occasional catch by a Hal Presley or something, that never happens with regularity. Yeah, I mean, the offense, the play calling, I think you could point to, but it all starts with that line. I mean, they can't run the ball, and in an offense that's predicated on running the ball, that's kind of an issue.
All right, then here is Bryce Cherry from the Waco Trib asked Dave Aranda this question in the postgame.
I believe that they've shown that they can block people and they can pass block and they can make communication and make adjustments within the game. We have to do that consistently, and we've got to do it when it matters most. And tonight we did not do that. I've seen them do it. We need to do it more.
All right, so he was asked a question in the postgame. That was from Bryce of the Waco Trib. From Brett Beeman, Aranda and staff don't strike me as a group that's equipped to succeed in this semi-pro environment.
I think, that might be a jump to conclusions. I don't think there's everything set up around them to do that now. And not to say that it couldn't be, but I do think that they put themselves, what they did though, this is some of it has to do with NIL because transfer portal and NIL go hand in hand, obviously. When you go offer a kid a transfer, he's going to ask you, what can you do for me there? But I do think transfer portal-wise, they did put themselves in this spot by 2 years ago, not getting into it as much as they could have. And, kind of thinking they had the guys that were ready to step up and play when they weren't. So then they got into it more last year, and that hasn't worked out. The offensive line transfers haven't worked out. Keytron Jackson's been all right, but again, what does that mean in the long run?
If they throw a big ball to him up in the air, he's probably not coming down with it.
No.
He's that's the guy, the way he was described, that when there's a what do you call it? A jump ball.
Yeah.
That he should jump up and every once in a while, just once every 2 or 3 times, rip it away from the defender or make the tough catch. And I feel like they throw it up, and more often than not, the ball hits the ground, no matter what the situation is. He gets pushed over or just can't make the tough catch or whatever. And I don't want to single him out, but it's just they feast or famine when they can't run the ball on the deep ball or Monterey making a big play. And when those guys aren't making those deep ball catches, you're literally it's Monterey has to bust a 75-yarder for us to have a chance to score.
With a catch and run situation.
Yeah, and so that's all it becomes. And so, everybody just sits back and tees off. And, credit to Tech. They dominated up front. Their defensive line played really well, and they shut down the run game. And they made Baylor one-dimensional. Still gave up a lot of passing yards, obviously, but it didn't end up really mattering on the long run. And they had a good idea of a game plan coming in, and they executed it well. But, I do want to give them credit, but at the same time, this is an every single week thing with Baylor, basically. The UCF game was a quarter. It was a quarter of big plays. That's all it was. It was not a dominant second half. It was not a dominant it was a quarter at the end of the game that won them that game and nothing more. And so this is basically who they've been all year long outside of that fourth quarter. And that's the part where, you can do this, you can do that, you can hope for this, you can hope for that. But it's they are who they are at this stage. We're 6 games in. They are who they are. And you know what? I don't blame fans for just kind of being over it at this point because it just, every time you want to get excited about something, you feel like you're getting your hopes up and your hopes get dashed. And they can only do and go to that well so many times before they just lose people. And I feel like, unfortunately for Dave Aranda, he's lost people because this is going back a year now to where it's just been like this every single week.
David Gibson, Baylor is mistaking not holding kids accountable with recruiting kids who need to be held accountable. Recruit edgy kids, but hold them accountable. That is the answer. And there's a question I asked Mack Rhodes about this, and even Aranda, because of what they dealt with about 8 years ago or whatever it was. Does that keep them from going after some kids that, like I said, you got to have some that have turd. They got to be turds. You got to have some guys who are edgy. And I understand that you have to make sure that those who you recruit don't all of a sudden put you back in the headlines either. I asked if you've ever been fired before. Kim Coulter, I've fired maybe hundreds of employees, in my career. And yeah, it's tough and sometimes sucks, but suck it or continue to lose. Roy Melton, getting fired sucks, of course, but just like Matt Wells at Tech, he was a great guy, but we could do better, and we did. And then somebody else asked about the up-tempo. Lee Deckard, you can't have up-tempo if you can't run the football and protect your quarterback.
Yeah, and I don't think they can do that. The more I think about it, the harder, like outside of, turning this around and making this a 7-5 season, it's going to be a really difficult path forward for this coaching staff because nothing they're doing is working. They can't point to say, well, this works, but for example, with Blake Shapen being out, this works, but Blake Shapen's out, so we have that excuse. Like with the top quarterbacks out, okay, they don't grow on trees, but he makes their offense work a little bit better, but it's not working. So nothing they can say points to anything working.
Yeah, he came back. He got healthy, had a great showing in that fourth quarter against UCF, only to turn around and get sacked a bajillion times.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. He can't take that kind of a beating every week. Now, not everybody's going to be as good as Texas Tech. Not everybody's going to, have as good of a game plan or be able to attack them in the same way. But odds are he's probably going to still get beat up a few times, and okay, that's fine. But it just feels like pulling teeth every week now, trying to get up for these games. Maybe I'm alone on an island there, but you can only put so much lipstick on a pig before you just call it what it is. And this has been a pig of a season, and very disappointing. And you can say, well, the expectations were out of whack. Too many people thought they were going to be way better than they were. And that's fair. I definitely know some people who had this team way better than they ever had any chance of being. And I had them better than they were being. I had them 8 wins this season, which I don't think was crazy coming off of last year and all of the changes they made.
And 8 home games.
And 8 home games. But now it's crazy. And now we're like, oh, well, the 8 home games are actually a hindrance. What? Now you're having to find reasons of why it's not anywhere even close to expectations. Forget not meeting expectations. They're not even close to They're not going to make a bowl game. Okay? It's year 4. And they're not going to make a bowl game barring, a 5-1 run to close out the season? Yeah. Okay, sure. That's going to happen. I love Dave Aranda. I think that he is good for college football. I like a lot of the staff as well. This is not a crusade against them in any way, shape, or form, but I feel like I'm taking crazy pills every week, talking about the same mental side of the game and the what's disconnecting, and it's just okay, I get it, and those are probably the reasons why, but after a while, as fans, as media, or whatever, we can only take so much of that diagnosis before it's the proof's in the pudding, and the pudding is bad and expired, and it's dried up at this point, and they got to figure something out with these games remaining. And even then, I don't know how much they can figure out because it doesn't seem like all that much has changed even halfway through the season.
We have to get to Rodney Blackshire, former Texas Tech receiver. We'll do that in a minute. Kim Coulter, I'm sorry, but I'm not letting this go because next year's the new beginning for the Big 12, and Baylor needs to be great again. If Mack Rhodes doesn't fire Aranda, y'all get what is deserved, more misery. Paula Fleck asking about what short list of candidates would be the replacement if it ever got to that point. I know that every AD, I was told this by an AD a long time ago, no matter the situation, winning or not, you always have a list in your back pocket for every single sport that you have within your athletic department, a short list of if it's an emergency hire, if it's somebody in transition, but you always have a list. I don't have that list, but I know that every AD does. Mack Rhodes, by the way, will join us tomorrow at his normal time at 4:20. When we come back, Rodney Blackshire, J.J. Joe around the corner, and yes, Phil Bennett, and a lot of it will be about Oklahoma's defense and Texas OU, and then also more evidence that he saw watching college football on the weekend. Thank you for your time every day here on 365 Sports. More to come, and this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for your automobile, whether you're getting it fixed up, whether you're buying, whether that's new or whether that's pre-owned. They are the people that you can count on. And right now, Highway 6 is a mess with construction, so they want to make it easier to buy a new Buick GMC or Cadillac right now. They've got the Buicks, a perfect combination of first-class luxury and value like no other SUV, ranked #1 overall brand for new vehicle quality by J.D. Powers. Buick offers amazing value, and right now you can save $5,000 on a new full-size 2023 Buick Enclave, or save $4,000 on a 2023 midsize Buick Envision. Military and first responders also can save an additional $500, plus qualified Buick buyers get 1.9% financing and no payments until 2024. They also trade for the best, so if you're not looking for a new vehicle, they also have a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock. Their financing goal over at Richard Carr is 100% credit approval. They say yes when others say no, and there's also their award-winning service department, the third component here, buying new, buying used or pre-owned, and also just getting your car serviced. Their service department right now standing by, and they cannot be beat on tires, as they offer a price match guarantee on the lowest price comparable tires in town. Service your car or truck with the people that you can count on over at Richard Carr. In business for 24 years in Central Texas, they built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs over the course of 2 decades. Run by proud Central Texans and proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible challenge. Hi, this is Dan Engel with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like instant issue debit cards free at all of our banking centers, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Rodney Blackshire, wide receiver, Texas Tech, and much more than that with what he's done in his life and also his career. Former Texas Tech receiver joins us now on 365 Sports with Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and I'm David Smoak. Rodney, thank you for your time. We appreciate it, and it's great to finally have you on the show.
Yeah, man, it's been a while. I thought we were going to get on last year, but it didn't happen, but I'm happy to be here now.
Well, we'll get you on again after this at some point. Your thoughts about Tech, of course, was kind of in that hole at 1-3. They've come back with wins, been able to beat Houston at home, and then they buried Baylor in Waco.
Yeah, it's a funny thing with the way the season's going. We expected more early in the season, but, it's all about what you do in conference play nowadays. So they're 2-2 in conference, and they got a chance to, really run the table up until we play the Texas Longhorns. We'll see about that one too.
Rodney, they didn't start out well. Do you think they've found their footing though?
Yeah, definitely. I think we have a veteran team. The biggest problem, for me, going up to Wyoming, they weren't ready for that altitude. We played them there my senior year, and then some of my teammates were talking about that. They didn't realize that, they went a day early, but it really doesn't matter. You still got to be there and get used to it. I just don't think they were really prepared for what the altitude was going to bring to them that first game. And, obviously we lost a close one to Oregon. So, I know the record, we're at 500 now, but we could be much better. And those were two close losses. So, we all the goals that they set leading to the season still there.
Rodney Blackshire with us on 365 Sports.
Rodney, does that feel like a bit of a turning point game on Saturday night?
Oh, definitely. Bears to go on the road and win a conference game against a tough Baylor team. They've been having some issues, but, they always tough to win. It's tough to beat that at home. So, I definitely feel like if we can continue with that momentum, we'll be fine the rest of the season moving forward.
Rodney, the Joey McGuire, we had him on last week, and in the interview with him, he actually said that he spoke to his team about, hey, did I make a mistake by trying to hype or embrace the hype of how they finished last year and what a lot of people thought they were a dark horse for this year? Did any of that ever interfere with your production as a team or a player?
No, the best thing to do as a coach is to believe in your players. Whether you consider it hype or just expectations, you got to have high expectations. Otherwise, you won't ever have real success. So I don't think that was a problem at all. I'm assuming the players told him the same thing. The more your coaches believe in you, in my opinion, as a player, you're going to play better.
Rodney Blackshire with us on 365 Sports.
Are you surprised to see granted, they're still, can run it wide open, but the move to kind of the power running game, did that surprise you?
I was expecting it, actually. The reality is, I know that today's college game, everybody wants to see people throw that ball around, but if you got a strong running game like we do with ties, I see no reason why you shouldn't. You used to run just after the pass. Those principles still work. You want exciting football, you want winning football. I want winning football, and being able to run the ball is proving that we can win.
Rodney, what do you think? What are your takes on Baron Morton? Obviously, a young guy, still learning, still finding his way, but has played a lot of football at this point. Terrible what happened to Tyler Shuck, but what are your thoughts on Morton and what he can do the rest of the way?
I always thought that I like Shuck, like you say. I thought they when they made the decision to go with Shuck, I think it was more because he's a senior. That's just my opinion. I thought Morton had more upside. The kid has a live arm, not that Shuck doesn't. And maybe it was a leadership thing, but I just felt like Morton was going to give us the best chance of winning this year.
Rodney, Baylor's in a free fall. You saw they're completely out of whack right now, and fortunate they have even a couple of wins after what they did in the fourth quarter to UCF. Were you ever in a situation where the team just started spiraling, and you can't have too many team meetings? It's up to team leadership, though. What would you do?
Well, we actually had a similar situation my senior year. First game, myself and Lloyd Hill both got hurt. So I missed 4 games. Lloyd missed 2 games. And, we had a high expectations my senior year.
And so
we just talked about everything still ahead of us, and we just kind of got together. We only lost 1 game after that. So that's something sometimes you have to do those things. You got to reevaluate while you're doing what you're doing and refocus and make sure everybody remember what those goals were going into the season.
But if you're 6 games into the season, you are who your record says you are, as Bill Parcells once said, correct?
Very true, very true. But, when you kind of said that now, again, when you're losing close games and you're losing an overtime game that you don't feel like you should have lost, again, you can reassess and refocus and find that extra fire, so to speak, to become the version of yourself that you expected to be, not what people on the outside expect.
A couple of things about Rodney, by the way. He was the Texas Tech's leading receiver in both 1990 and 91, Southwest Conference record holder for single-game reception yardage. Now, can you go back and let me know about the kick return? Did you have a kick return against Texas A&M, or was I think a fan of our show? Yeah.
Yeah, the only one in their history. It was funny. They had the 12-man team, which was all comprised of all walk-ons, and back in 1990, October actually, 1990, we were able to return a kick against them. So after that, they got rid of them. So my friends in Lubbock called me the 12-man killer because of that.
Are you a 49ers fan?
Oh, yeah, that's why I'm actually in San Francisco right now.
All right. Well, can you try to describe what in that? They devastated Dallas last night from almost the start of that game.
Yeah, the thing, and we've talked, Anthony Lynn, who also played with me, he's a coach for the 49ers, and I got a chance to see him the night before the game, and that's what we kind of talked about. I asked him, what's the game plan? He said, we don't change what we do. We're going to run the ball. We get behind, we're still going to run the ball, and then everything else predicated off of that. And that's the reason I said what we said about the pick. So from the game yesterday, we ran the ball straight at him. Christian McCaffrey didn't have his typical yards, but he ran the ball effectively. And then Jordan Mason came in, and, obviously Brock Purdy's been playing lights out, no turnovers. And our defense is terrible. And we were able to adjust, make the Cowboys try to adjust what we do.
Rodney, what are your thoughts on a Big 12 post-Oklahoma and Texas, and how do you see just all the pieces kind of fitting together, but in particularly Texas Tech?
I look forward to it. Again, Texas and Oklahoma consider themselves elite. But, the reality is the last couple of years, neither one of them has won the conference. All we have to do is, fill that void and, continue to do what we're doing well in recruiting. And, anything can happen. We will move up to the top of our conference, so to speak. And it won't just be because of our name. It'll be because of the production on the field. With Texas in particular, they're always this year's champs. They're always going to be great. They're always back. But they always show their true colors by the end of the season.
Rodney Blackshire, former Texas Tech receiver with us, National Football League Players Association member as well on 365 Sports. So if you had to tackle Taj Brooks, not that you did that, you were a wide receiver unless somebody threw a pick. But if you had to try to tackle him, how would you describe what that would be?
I would call my friends to come help.
Yeah,
he reminds me a lot of Bam Morris. Bam is a little bit taller, but he runs the ball very real hard. Reminds me a lot of old Bam Morris, who played with me for a couple of years at Tech.
He went to Cooper High School, Bam Morris, and then played at Texas Tech, and then went on, of course, in the NFL with the Steelers and his career in the NFL. What are your thoughts about the NIL? Texas Tech's got a bunch of it. They've done really well. They jumped on it immediately. They're promoting it. Obviously, those who were involved in it, and now the NCAA is looking at even allowing schools to get even more involved. But Tech seems to be like they jumped in head first. What was that like?
Well, again, we very fortunate to have Corey Campbell and his billions of dollars to help, kickstart things. But, the NIL was inevitable. I think it can be regulated a little bit better. But, for us right now, it's going to become a game changer. Like I said, this will be next year's recruiting class will be Coach McGuire's third class. And usually the third class is when you start to really play your guys that fit your system. And I think, like I said, with that NIL money that comes in, the reality is these kids, they're playing for pay. It was illegal back when I was in school, but, now it's not. And so we got to go in head first and hope gain as much of an advantage as we can while we have the money to do so. Just recreate that culture that we so heard.
Last thing for you. What do you tell young men student athletes, advice you give them? You've played the game. You've been around the game. What is advice you would give them?
Always be a student first. That athletic career is going to last only so long. And, I got some friends that have lived it to where they don't know what to do with themselves once they're finished playing a game. And I always remind them that it's just a game. Use it as a tool to get other lifetime goals accomplished.
Thank you, Rodney. Appreciate it. We'll have you again. Appreciate your time.
All right, thank you, guys.
Rodney Blackshire, yes, sir, former Texas Tech receiver with us on 365 Sports. A lot of Tech fans that are in the chat, and very busy today, as you could imagine, after the win against Baylor in the dominant fashion in Waco. When we come back, J.J. Joe, his thoughts, hit the evidence, what he saw from the booth, Baylor radio, and then Phil Bennett. We know we're going to get truth serum from him, too. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Ted Teague sent me new information at the end of last week on what they have now for the month of October. And listen up here. Right now, Ram Power Days, you get a 2023 Ram 1500 Crew Cab, the Lone Star, for 0% financing for 72 months. Spooky, scary deals on the 2023, the new one, the Dodge Challenger or Charger, SXT, GT, or RTL models. Total values up to $3,000 off. And also they have the Scat Packs and Hellcats as well, and a great selection of the legendary Dodge models. It's also that time of the year when you get the Jeep Adventure Days. You can get 10% off MSRP level trim Jeep Compasses, all trim level Jeep Gladiators, all Jeep Grand Cherokees except for the Laredo package. You heard that right. It's a great time to buy. 10% off MSRP, a great selection of cars, trucks, and SUVs. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of health care while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of health care has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations. Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This segment with former Baylor quarterback and Baylor radio analyst J.J. Joe is sponsored by Alliance Bank Central Texas, where customers have confidence that their financial needs are in good hands with 2 locations in Waco.
Former Baylor quarterback, Baylor radio color analyst J.J. Joe with us. J.J., we had about a 30-minute segment to start the 4 o'clock hour, and thank you for being patient with the segment today. We're running a little bit late. We apologize for that. But,
no
man,
worry.
It's almost as if we just all, as someone that has watched what we've seen now for almost a year, just unleashed. I know that you played it, you bleed green and gold, but you've been frustrated too. I just have, what was that we saw Saturday night?
Smoak, it was a rough one. I think it's what we've seen all year.
Mm-hmm.
This team, I forget the coach who said that you are what your record says you are. And right now this is a 2-4 team. We've been watching a 2-4 team all year. It's shown flashes. And what we're seeing played out is I think, teams come in, and they seemingly have the answer to everything we want to do or trying to do. And then, of course, on top of that, sometimes it just looks like we don't manage what the level of effort should be.
So how do you fix it?
Man, that's a tough one because every team they have a button that, the coaches try to just figure out over the course of a season. And every team is different. And I think the interview with Coach Aranda that we had after the game was probably the most despondent I've heard from him, because I think, he's at a loss a little bit. It's just my interpretation because, he's just not sure. He thought they had pushed the button a little bit last week in Florida, and lo and behold, the same things just kind of crept their head up again. So it's a tough one, man. It's just a bunch of soul searching.
Was Texas Tech's defense, in particular defensive line, that great, or is there alarms going off all over that offensive line right now?
I think alarms have been going off up front. I think, we played a good Utah game. That line did a pretty good job in that first half. And I think, we started feeling like, okay, these guys are growing together. I think the easiest way to say it and the most frank way to say it, I think I can do this. I'm not only a radio guy, I'm a former player, is we had 2 years of really good football players up front. Basically, they all left in the last 2 years. We were blessed that they all came back, and for some reason we didn't build on it. And it is showing it's rearing its ugly head now.
JJ, you mentioned Aranda as being almost despondent, and you could see. In fact, I think at times, he lost part of his voice in that comeback in Orlando, but you could just see like he had been hit by a truck, like he was blindsided.
Right.
And so that's who they are, right? You're blindsided, but yet again, you've seen the same evidence for 6 consecutive weeks. How much of that is on his shoulders?
They're all going to bear the burden. I mean, the head man, you know how it is. We've seen that story.
Mm-hmm.
The head man is going to bear the brunt. If the ship goes down, the captain has to go down with it. And Coach Aranda, over the last 4 years, we replaced an offensive coordinator, we replaced a defensive coordinator, and he's a defensive-minded head coach. And our defense is horrid right now. And as much as I like him, the number one thing I would expect from an Aranda-led team is, if not an elite defense, a very sound defense. And those are typically the sides of the ball that get better first, the side that coach typically is the head of, or at least that's his kind of bent. And we're seeing just kind of mass kind of issues across the board. And I don't know what the answers are, but I think they can turn around, at least salvage some things. But man, it's a long road to hoe to get this thing turned.
JJ, is this a point in the season where, they've got a bye week coming up? Do you put starting jobs on the line to try to light a fire or something like that?
Well, I mean, I would think that Coach Mateos and Coach Grimes, I think they did that early on after that first game. They really shook up some things up front. But when I heard Monterey talk after the game, I've been feeling that, and it's certain guys. I'm not going to name names because there's certain guys like I'll get the binoculars and I'll look on the sideline, and it's not stuff that happens during the game. I'm looking for guys who want to get in the game. That's the one thing I always remember is like, man, everybody, I just want to play. I want to play, and I understand what he's saying. Sometimes you do have players on your team that, man, I got a scholarship. I got a little NIL money. Now I got, it's good here. Everything, they've made it so comfortable here. The locker rooms are great. And the work that comes along with being elite is not fun. The teams I played on, we had an elite stretch where we didn't finish elite. The team in 21 finished elite. And the work that comes along with being good to elite is not fun. And most people, even most football players don't want to do it. And I get a feeling that we have more than we would want to on this team that are not willing to do what I would call what it takes to be elite. And I think that happens, man. And the coaches have to figure it out and get it corrected.
What did you think of Blake Shapen's performance? And I know it kind of seems silly given all of the sacks and the quarterback pressures and the lack of a run game, but given all of those things, how do you feel like he performed in his second outing since returning from injury?
I mean, I think he did great, man. I mean, I'm not going to put it on Blake. Blake is, he's been under stress a little bit. He went out the first game basically because we couldn't protect him this week. They did in stretches, did okay, but overall Tech did a great job of just putting pressure on us, sometimes blitzing, sometimes not. And he stood in there and tried to do everything he could do. But I'll tell you, and I said before, I mean, it's all about the protection and what happens up front. And even when you got a veteran quarterback, and I think he's making strides. I think we're seeing a better Blake. The only issue now is he has a little bit more talent edge, but the protection that he had the first 2 years is not as sound. It's not as sound this year. So I like what he's doing. I think he's growing. He just needs, man, he needs to survive. Well, and I think if he survives, he'll learn a lot.
You played the position. Has it become almost like PTSD that every time you take a snap?
It can, but I commend Blake because a lot of times what they talk about their focus. And a quarterback, has to have the down the field focus. And as soon as the defense gets your focus to kind of start looking at that line or the rush, they got you. And I thought Blake did a pretty good job of no matter how many hits he took, his first bent was to look downfield. And that's tough. That takes a tough guy.
JJ, what is the morning after a game where you get hit as much as he did feel like?
You feel like you've been in a car wreck. And I'm not exaggerating. Every Sunday after the game, we ran a little bit more option, but I didn't run a ton. But I felt like I was in a car wreck. It took me to about Wednesday to feel like I could go play again. Because quarterbacks, number one, don't get hit as often. And on Saturday, you're getting the brunt of the hits. And they're coming full speed. And you just feel like a literal car wreck. Your neck is sore, your back hurts, you got bruises on your thighs, and you need all of those days to get right. And you're young. That's the good thing about it, right? And you get back and you forget about it and you do it again the next week.
JJ, what did you think of Texas Tech and just kind of what you, I guess, gathered from seeing their performance? Obviously, a nice win for that staff after last year. But in general, and seeing them move forward, what do you think about their chances to win a few more games?
I like them. I like their young quarterback. I think they're managing him quite well. They're managing him and not allowing him – he's got one read deep. He's got a lot of built-in completions. I like the scheme, what they're doing with him, at least what they've done the last couple of weeks against Houston and us. He has good arm strength. He has probably Blake-level arm. And I like what they're doing. But I said this on the air, and I'll say it again. There's been 2 times over the last few years that I felt like we were out-coached. One was last year at home against Kansas State, and once was this weekend.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fair.
I do think that. I don't care. Lombardi couldn't have helped this team beat Texas 2 or 3 weeks ago. But yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, and you just wonder, it's a week off, and people are mad. People are really mad, and fans are mad, and you have to wonder how in the world now can Baylor sell this the rest of the year?
It's a tough one. I'm glad they're on the road. I'll be honest with you, because I mean, we played how many games at home? Already 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, we played 5 and we won 1.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, so it's good for them to go on the road and hopefully figure out a way to, against a tough Cincinnati team, at least a team that plays good defense, to try to get a W, man. At least get a little momentum, but it's gonna be hard. I mean, it's Mac has a lot of soul searching. Mac Rhodes, Coach Aranda and his staff, they got a lot of work, but they have to just figure out what are the things we can do. What are those few things we can do? We know what we want to do, and this is what I loved about Coach Reed. And I know he got a lot of banging because he was the coach going into the Big 12. But Coach Reed would change our offense from year to year based on what we could do, based on what we lost. And I love that about him because he would find a way, like, Jay, we just need to get to 24 the way we play offense. And he would figure out a way to just, the first year I was there in 90, we were very basic. 91, the next year, he could do a lot of stuff. We had a veteran team. 92, we lost a lot of our linemen. He said, hey, we're going to do 3 things. We're going to run it, we're going to run option, we're going to throw deep. That's it. He says, that's it. And we're going to run some trick plays. And that's what we did. In 93, we were a little bit better. So they just got to figure it out, man.
Yeah, JJ, I wonder how much of that, we were talking about Texas and Oklahoma earlier. Oklahoma, I think, changed from last year doing what they thought they could do to this year doing what they know they can do. And Baylor looks like they're in that phase of they think that this should work, but now the empirical evidence is out there. What they're doing does not work with the guys that they have.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Early on, I was sugarcoating. But I said, hey, look, it's, sometimes we get married to a scheme, and I get it. Coaches they're promoted. They get notoriety based on this scheme, this technique, this whatever they like to run. But the best coaches, and I'm going to tell you, the last few coaches we played against, they isolate and attack. I mean, literally, we've seen it. Texas State isolated and attacked. Browns would isolate and attack. Tech isolated and attack. We're one of the few teams that don't isolate and attack. And I don't know why, but maybe it's because our line. But that's what 21st century football has turned into. It's turned into almost basketball in a sense on grass. They find a weakness, they isolate it, they don't just go at that. They isolate different parts of the field, turn into a 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 game, and they attack. And they figure if they do that enough, then they'll win. And that's what we're seeing in football, and I think the adjustment has to be that way.
Somebody asked earlier about the so-called up-tempo. You can't go up-tempo if you can't run the ball and protect your quarterback, can you?
No, you can't. The only thing up-tempo really does for me is it simplifies the defensive scheme for you. You know where everybody's going to be. But still, at the end of the day, you have to execute at a decent high level. You got to – and it's interesting, and I know you guys saw it. You saw Tech linemen. They never blew anybody off the ball except for sometimes going. They just stood in front of a guy and made sure that they didn't give up penetration. Mm-hmm. That's all they did. Joey said, hey, we don't have dominating guys up front. We just get in front and you just turn them one way or the other. And our running back is so good. We've taught them to be patient and find the crease. And they did that for 40, however many minutes, 60 minutes. And they have 2 pretty decent backs, 1 really good back. They took big time advantage of that.
If you don't mind me asking you this question, you played at Baylor, you're an alum, you're proud of it. How hard is it to watch what you're watching? I know you've been through many other years when they weren't very good. And but you have to, for your reputation, people count on you to tell the truth. How difficult has this been?
It's only been difficult for me. I mean, like you say, Smoak, I've seen some stuff. John and Ricky on the staff, Damo and Ricky, they've seen more so than I have. I was not there during Steel days. But I've seen some stuff. I've seen some, I think, a 3 and 9 and a 4 and 8. And it's tough to watch. But the only thing that I have angst over is that we were there. Literally, we were there. We were at the point where the rules were breaking our way, where Baylor could have stayed 8 to 9 wins or better. We were there. And I believe that Baylor, like we sometimes do, believed it was more about, say, brand and these things versus what it's really about. And what it's really about is you got to get certain players in that can play at a high level. And in today's game, you have to be able to support these guys through NIL to get guys who can play at elite levels. I'm telling you this, a Terrell Bernard and a Jalen Petrie. Now, Petrie stays because Petrie's that kind of guy. But as those guys develop, you may lose a couple of those guys in today's NCAA football that we held on to for 4 and 5 years.
Thank you, man. Great stuff. Appreciate the insight and honesty. JJ Joe, not pulling any punches at all, and also continuing our conversation from earlier in the 4 o'clock hour about Baylor football. We're going to have Phil Bennett here in just a second. Boy, I love what he just said. You know, that, you know, the branding, the imaging. I had somebody send me a text even earlier today about, would you ask Mack Rhodes about, is it so concerning to you that you have to make sure the branded image stays like pristine because of what you've been through, or get people in here who can play the damn game? And we'll do that tomorrow. And here's somebody that's going to let us know how he feels as well. Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach and former Baylor defensive coordinator. Phil, Baylor's a mess. I want to get into Texas OU quite a bit, but we'll come off of what we just mentioned with JJ. And he mentioned it, man. They need to stop worrying about being pristine and image and branding, and need to get in some football players. What say you?
Well, yeah, I agree with JJ. I mean, it's obvious to me that there's a lack of toughness, and really, you know, it's hard to win, David, when you can't stop the run and you can't run the ball. And that was the difference in that game. I mean, they were physical, we were not, and you know, Tech dominated from start to finish, and did not carry over anything from the second half of UCF. And right now, I think one of the players said it. There's too much standing around waiting for somebody else to do something, but it wasn't very impressive.
Phil, you had a team that had a bad start to a season, and then was one of the better closes to a season that maybe you know, in the Big 12 that anybody could see, in the way that you guys rebooted and started. Talent aside on that, because you guys knew you had it and you just weren't hitting on all cylinders. Dave Aranda believes he has it, but how did you guys reboot your season when you had a losing record?
You know, Paul, I told you last week, or really before the UCF game, when you're at this stage where they're at, you got to find out, hey, listen, this is what we can do, and we can win doing this. I see too many things. I mean, defensively, we don't do enough. We're too vanilla to stop the run. Obviously we're not good enough in base to stop the run, so we need to do some things to create problems for the offense. We don't do that, but you got to find things you can do. Number one, to give you a chance. The other thing offensively is if you're, you know, every week you scout yourself, and if there's a area that you just can't get it done, don't do it anymore. Look at another avenue, and you know, I know things go from game to game. But I go back to this. The team who usually can run the ball and stop the run is going to win the game. And that was a prime example in the Tech Baylor game. Now, obviously, too, you got to only play the players that deserve to play. I mean, there's times you have to make decisions and say, you know what, this is what we want. You're not giving it to us. We're going to give somebody else a chance. And I've had that happen, and guys really come to the top, and you get better with that.
How would you approach this bye week? Like, how does that kind of unfold in your mind, especially given the circumstances of what they're coming off of?
Well, you know, these kids and these coaches are hearing all the negatives. You know, and what they've got to do, they've got to tune it out, and they've got to take ownership of this season. The season's not over by any stretch of the imagination. I've said this before, there's games to be won. And what they've got to do is they've got to go out, look at the areas that they're not good at, find out what they can do, and work on it. It becomes a work week. I mean, this week should be a work week to get better on themselves, not anybody else, but on themselves. and then next week start your game prep. And I think you have to look at it like that, or you're not going to grow as a team.
Phil, you mentioned Monterey Baldwin, what he said in the postgame. Last question about Baylor. He basically said that there are too many players who are just happy to be here for the ride. If you ever would have heard that as a coach on a team that is an assistant, a coordinator, or a head coach, what would you have done if you knew that?
Well, I mean, sometimes, kids say things, but I don't know the total situation. But I don't think in all my years, David, I don't think I've really heard that from a player. I've heard them say we got to get better, but I really hadn't had one say, "Hey, we got too many guys here just for the ride." And you know what? Unfortunately, at times it looks like that might be true.
All right, Oklahoma, Brent Venables, year 2. They worked the portal. They recruited their asses off, and they look like it's a night and day difference for them.
No question. And the thing too that in that game, Texas, had almost 600 yards, but 3 turnovers were the difference in the game, and they were forced turnovers. Oklahoma's D-line totally dominated the line of scrimmage, and those 3 turnovers gave, along with the great job that Levy and Seth Luttrell did with the offense, was a winning formula.
Phil, a lot of times in big rivalry games, things get sloppy and you're tense and all that. I came away impressed with that game and that it was just a really good game. And both teams played well at times. Both teams, it didn't seem like anybody made mistakes because the moment was too big for them.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I've been to a bunch. I've been involved, watched Texas OU a long time, and you're right. It was a highly competitive, well coached, both sides of the ball. Things. One would score. And I said I was actually in San Antonio watching Incarnate Word, and I told one of the coaches there after Texas had scored, and I said they might have scored too quick. And sure enough, Jeff. And what happened? The only thing I would be critical of Texas is they went into sort of like a prevent defense. They didn't do what they had been doing against Gabriel the last 2 series, a little bit of pressure, mixing it up. They sort of played soft, and he made them pay for it. He scrambled, and I tell you, Jeff did a really good job with a quarterback run game. And I don't think he has asked him to run as much as he did in that game, and it really helped him.
And if you're running that offense, a minute 15, does that feel like you have about 20 minutes to actually get the job done with as quickly as that thing can move and just hit a couple big plays and boom, you're down the field?
Well, no question. I mean, they do it every snap. And, I don't know if you remember this, but they caught Texas in a sub situation on the first. I think it was like they went about 15 yards on the first play, made a great play, threw a pass, and then they caught him in a sub situation and got an infraction, got a penalty, and had a free play, and sort of got him on the heels. And then I sat there and I said, "This is trouble." And then at the end of the game, they and I don't understand this, but they ran a zone blitz, and the receiver that caught the touchdown pass, there was only a corner there, and there were 2 receivers, so they were a man short. They got him confused, and like as I said, Gabriel really, you could tell he's mature. He's played a lot of football. The moment certainly was not big, too big for him. And if you remember a year ago, he didn't play in that game.
No.
And he missed that game, and what a difference he was.
When he threw the touchdown pass, I went back and stopped the video. He had, maybe I'm wrong, 6 to 8 guys around him, like it was a cocoon. And, defense and offensive players all around him. He's not a big, tall guy. How impressive, as a defensive coach, how impressive was it that he kept his poise and got that pass off?
Oh, it was very impressive. And I think I think the thing you saw, I think a lot of people saw that. He's not even 6 foot, but he was smooth. He knew, that old saying, knowledge is power. And I want to throw Jeff in there. Jeff's done a great job of teaching him where it's going. They were bringing some pressure from the field and he knew to the nub side. He knew, what was there, and he never backed off. He didn't look at the rush. He knew where the breakdown was, and it became wide open. And he throws a very nice touch ball, very smooth, nice touch ball. He reminds me of Drew Brees.
What would you do if you were Mario Cristobal the last 48 hours?
Oh, man. I wish, I know Mario and I like him. I wish he would have just come out and said, hey, if you better own up to it. Of course, everybody at Baylor still remembers the UNLV Kevin Steele game.
Yep.
And, I want to tell you something. You look at the A&M Alabama game. I had no idea what Nick was doing at the end of the game when he threw the bubble. Did you see that,
yes.
guy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, all he had to do, and quarterback could have, give ground, come back, and taken all the ground. They could have taken the clock off. But when he threw the ball the first time, I'm thinking, oh my God, what is he doing? And then that night to see that, and I think it was almost, to the Aggies, it was a double bad day because here's their old quarterback who they didn't think was good enough. Miami, beats them bad, and then he beats Miami on the last play of the game. So, it was a terrible mistake. And I read something, and Mario talked about, well, I've always done that. I'm not sure I would be telling that many people that when I make $8 million to win games. And it was, it's just you can't fix things like that. I mean, you tell the players, be smart, don't be selfish, don't do stupid things. And then as a coach, you just got to own up to it, and hopefully that you can get this team back.
He did it in 2018 and lost a game when he was at Oregon to Stanford. Same thing. It took him to overtime to do it as well. So yes, he has always done it that way. Phil, on A&M, Jimbo Fisher made a really bad clock decision in that one as well, burning a timeout when they were going to run the field goal team out. He also is very averse to going for it on fourth down when that kind of has changed all across football. How do you feel about going for it on fourth down? Because he is near the bottom of the country. He goes for it less than one time a game per season.
Well, of course, spending 6 or 7 seasons with Art Briles, that's a given for me. I remember this. My wife is sitting here listening to me. Of course, our daughter was at Baylor. And before I went there, I was at Pitt. She told me one time, she said, I want to tell you what I love about Art. Before I was ever there, she says, he goes for it every fourth down. And lo and behold, the next thing I know, he's offering me a job. First thing she tells me, she goes, you better understand he's going to go for it all over the field on fourth down. And and he did. But, at that point in that game, you send your kids a message. I love what Art did. I bought into it. Art says, hey, we're not backing up. No, we're not going to be stupid. If it's 4th and 6, we're way backed up. But he always lets the kids know our expectancy, hey, we're a 4-down team. And I think in all our years, we went for it more than anybody. I think Jimbo sent his players a bad message. It was less than a yard, and the ball was at midfield, and you're in a game that can really put you in the driver's seat in the SEC West, and yet you punt it. And I think that sort of at that point they lost the edge. I think they lost the momentum. The other thing, I think when they got down on the 2-yard line, when the kid stepped out and they got the penalty, the first play, if you remember it, they ran the ball, and they were sort of getting down there. The quarterback, they were throwing to the back. I would have liked this, and then, of course, they get a penalty. I'd like to see them try to throw on first down there. Because it looked like very obviously that Alabama's D-line was dominating A&M's front. So their only chance was try to get the ball on the perimeter. But I thought that sent a bad message.
Coach, a few weeks ago, Alabama was, dead on arrival, losing to Texas, and now here they are in the huge win over A&M. What are your thoughts on what you've seen as they've adjusted the last month or so?
Kevin Steele is a good friend of mine. I talked to him last week, and he made a great statement. He said that, Milroe did not play versus South Florida. Nick came in, he really likes his young coordinator, but he told him, he said, listen, it's our best chance to win. Let's find out what he can do those things, and not ask him to do things he can't do. They played good defense all year. I think yards per snap, they're at 4 yards a snap. Defensively, I don't think they've given up. They're right around 290 yards a game, and I think that's played out. They beat Ole Miss, a very good team. They went to Mississippi State and won, and I really think he got his confidence in A&M. A&M made a conscious decision on defense. We're going to crowd the front, we're going to be physical, and we're going to sort of leave our corners and safeties in coverage. And it didn't work for him. He ends up throwing for, I think, 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, and, they were able to dominate the run. It's a crazy thing. Everybody talks about the SEC being physical, O-line. Do you know what both of them average running per snap? 1 yard a carry. How about that, Dave?
Golly.
One of them wasn't. I don't think Alabama. I think they were 0.9, and A&M was 1-1. How about that?
That's ridiculous. So, Phil, I'm always going to be fascinated by Nick Saban and what he did with Jalen Milroe and what he was willing to endure and the confidence he had to win that game at South Florida, because he sent Jalen Milroe a message that game about how ugly he was willing to let it get if his attitude didn't change. And then not only that, if you're on that sideline and go, man, if we put Milroe in this game, this could change everything, and Coach Saban doesn't care, that sends a message to everybody, doesn't it?
Without a question. One of Nick's strongest traits, and it's admired by everybody, is Nick and Bill Saban are two of a kind. Bill Snyder, is they believe in their process. And if you're not involved and you don't believe in that process, you can't be there. And you're exactly right. People ask, well, why didn't he play? Simple. He was not going to play. If it would have come down to triple overtime, he would have never got in that game because he was making a point. And you know what? It could pay off for him now. I still don't think they're a great dominant team, but it sure has paid dividends. You're exactly right.
You mentioned that he kind of himself threw that bubble screen, whatever it might have been. He admitted in the press conference that they won despite him. Nick Saban, who can walk on water as a football coach, immediately criticized himself in the press conference. I thought that was really pretty cool.
Well, I'm going to give you an insight on that. You know what happened on that? Because I couldn't stand it. Before they got to the airport, I texted one of their coaches. I said, what in the... And like I said, I told you I was in San Antonio. He said, you always tie trailers with throws, like it's read pass. It's run pass, I'm sorry. And they saw everybody, A&M was playing the box. Everybody was in the box. So he said, hell, I'm just going to throw it out. It was one of his options. They didn't give a stay call, meaning the pass is not an option. Just run the ball. And this kid is not experienced enough to know, hey, I shouldn't throw the ball. And they didn't put a stay call with it. And that's exactly what happened. He did what they normally practice. Because if you look at the nickel, A&M's nickel, he was almost in the box. And let me say this, go back and look at that. If he catches the ball, he might score.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hey, everybody that watches this, the chat room loves your segment with us. We appreciate you very much. Craig, you have one more with Coach?
Yeah, Coach, just here at the halfway point, based on your own eye test and expertise and all that, who are the 4 best teams in the country right now, in your opinion?
Well, I tell you, it's number one until Georgia loses, they've got to be one of them. All right. I think Ohio State has proven that they're starting to get their mojo back. And then I would have to look at both Oregon. I like their quarterback, and I like the quarterback at Washington. Those would possibly be my five. I don't think USC can ever be a championship team with playing defense the way they're playing it. I like Michigan, but I just don't know enough about them. Their quarterback, Michigan would be in there somewhere too. So you could say five.
Well, and we'll get to talk to you about Oregon, Washington next week, so that'll be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it.
All right, guys.
The segment. Be good. That's Phil Bennett, former Baylor defensive coordinator, longtime college football coach, and is always just fun. And he can text the guys on the Alabama staff, text somebody that's maybe on the staff somewhere else, and that also is what he brings to the table for us, and I love that.
Left out a team, and I'm just saying.
Who's that, Paul?
Undefeated.
When we come back, you're going to bring that up next week. When we come back, Dan Murphy, ESPN, on the discussions, the NCAA. I know you've roll your eyes. This is not with Congress. This is about within the NCAA giving schools more decision-making power when it comes to the NIL. That's next. Dan Murphy. This is 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now in downtown Waco, 2 locations to serve you. Let's talk about the original today because they are the home of the craft bourbons, the local craft bourbon. So if it's from Texas, they've got it. And they've got every kind of variety of things. And they're always, I always like to use the term churning the roster. They always have new stuff. They always have exciting stuff. You go in there, you're always going to see something that they haven't had there before. That's the case for not only just bourbons, but pretty much everything they have in the store. There's so much variety that they have there. It is also fall. That means craft beers. That means your fest beers and all that. And I know Emery is all about a good Oktoberfest beer. I know that's where he lives, in a good Oktoberfest beer, wearing like a flannel shirt and drinking a big stein of some frosty fest beer. That I see Emery living that life. And they have all those at Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, and now in downtown Waco.
During Ram Power Days at Allen Samuels in Waco, get 2.9% for 72 months on new 2023 1500 Lone Star and Laramie 4x4 crew cabs, or $11,000 off MSRP on Lone Stars and $12,500 off MSRP on Laramies.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Notre Group Insurance Agency. With the Notre Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Notre Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Notre Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Samantha Duvall, Marketing Director for TexasBeefHouse.com. You know all about their great Wagyu beef and product they have. You can go to TexasBeefHouse.com for anything you want to order. But, Samantha, thanks for your time. There's an auction coming up in the month of November. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so November 11th, we're having our first public beef auction. It's going to be here at our ranch in White House, Texas. It's going to be a live auction. You can bid in person. You can bid on the phone, or we'll also have it online. And we're auctioning off Wagyu and Angus beef. We'll have 30 to 40 pound bundles. They'll be full of steaks, hamburger, and primals. this is perfect for not only the restaurant owners, but also homeowners.
So if somebody wants to load up your deep freezer with some great product from a place that is just delivering all of the time, with Wagyu from their ranch to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Dan Murphy, ESPN, today with a very insightful and also informative story about the NCAA and also team, schools, programs, universities on campus having more control of what can be done or said and what they can do. Dan, thank you for your time with Paul Craig, and I'm David Smoak. I know when people hear about the NCAA, they roll their eyes because Congress or whatever else. What is different about what we're hearing or what you're reporting today?
Hey, fellas, thanks for having me. Yeah, to be clear, this isn't a done deal yet. This is something that they're considering doing, and I think this is the NCAA members, the schools themselves, trying to start making a little progress, being proactive themselves, trying to change rules in a way that would open up the rules to allow schools just to make it much easier for the school to be involved in helping the athlete make money. They wouldn't be able to pay the athletes themselves yet, but it is walking up about as close to that line as they can get without actually making the athletes into employees themselves if all of this stuff actually goes through.
Well, wouldn't it just simplify it for the NCAA if you could, like, it's kind of ridiculous that, you can talk about NIL, you can talk about, that you need to get your donors involved in that, but then when it comes down to it, you can't say anything about it when it comes to specifics, which makes it seem all seedy and underground, which I know that some of it is, but it's legal now. So shouldn't they embrace the legality of it?
Right. And I think that's where more and more athletic directors are getting. I think when these rules first, it's funny, I was talking to the Nebraska athletic director about this morning, Trev Alberts, and he said the things we're talking about now, that we're trying to do now, are conversations we wouldn't even want to have started 2 years ago. And I think this was such a major change of what everybody was brought up with in college sports, and thinking, it's just verboten for us to be involved with anything in players and money, that it's taken 2 years and a few months for everyone to get a little bit more comfortable with it. And I think there's a lot of folks in positions of running athletic departments that have seen how this has worked for the past couple of years and just said, hey, can we just call this what it is at this point? And start treating it, like the small part of the business that it is. And that would make life a lot easier for a lot of the people who are actually trying to support athletes in the athletic departments, and trying to make sure that they get the best opportunities and don't get, the wool pulled over their eyes by a sketchy agent or something like that. And those are all things that could be potentially changing here in the next weeks or months.
Let's say that, okay, they have this out there. They want this. I saw and read your quote from Trev Alberts in Nebraska. What could derail this? And how do they prevent anyone from, saying, okay, wait a minute, most of this money, most of this time and energy will be for men's basketball and football. What about the girls?
So two different questions there. The second one, right, Title IX is always something that comes up. And actually bringing more of this under control of the athletic department might help with some of those problems. What you have to do with Title IX is make sure you create equal opportunities for all your men and women athletes on campus. And so if you have if you have a collective now who's doing much of that stuff, the collective, there's no way for an athletic director to control whether the collective offers the same kind of deals to a football player as they do to a volleyball player or a softball player. If that all falls under the school's purview more and more, if they offer the same resources and the same opportunities, it gets easier with Title IX to make that work. But in terms of your first question of what could get in the way here, I mean, there's still plenty to get in the way here. The NCAA has dragged its feet on everything, and really a lot of their paralysis over the past several years, over the past couple of decades, if you look at it, is the fear of being sued for anything they do as looking like it's an antitrust violation. And also they've gotten closer and closer to this line of the courts looking at the system of college sports and saying, you can call this whatever you want, but if you're helping an athlete put money in their pocket, because they're an athlete at your school, that's employment. And that comes along with a lot of other tags that you have to then pay the athletes directly, and you have to treat them like employees. And that's really the hill that a lot of people in the NCAA are willing to die on. They're not there yet, but I think if there are enough people within the NCAA that look at this and say this is a step too close to employment, then they're going to back away from it, and that could potentially torpedo any chance of something like this happening.
How do you think this will help weed out some of the lesser collectives, so to speak?
Well, if the one of the changes that's been proposed here would be that the schools themselves could communicate with third-party licensees, which is a fancy NCAA way of saying that the athletic director or somebody in the athletic department could call up the collective that they want to use and say, hey, 8 guys on our defensive front need NIL deals. Can you hook them up? And, right now they're technically not supposed to do that. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find an athletic department that doesn't have open lines of communications with their collectives at this point, but technically it's against the rules. If you give the athletic department a little bit more control about sort of lining up some of these deals for players, not quite negotiating the details of them, but, sort of walking the two parties into a room and saying, hey, you guys ought to figure this out together. Then the athletic department has a little bit more control over which collectives are sitting down with players and having those conversations.
Yeah, that seems like they basically are involved in the decision making, but they technically aren't.
It's semantics to a certain degree. It's leading a horse to water and basically taking the collective's hand and holding it out, and taking the athlete's hand and holding it out, and making them hold hands, but they got to shake themselves, I think is maybe the best way to describe it. It's getting as close to they can without actually having the legal responsibility of saying, the school is acting as an agent here, giving the athlete a deal.
Is this maybe the NCAA making a now, like they used to have you can have bagels but no cream cheese, because look, Alabama can afford cream cheese, but let's not get into what North Alabama can't. They can't have cream cheese; they just have butter there.
Yeah, I think there's some of this is more and more people within the NCAA and people that run college athletic departments recognizing that what they've done so far is not a sufficient amount of change, and that waiting for Congress to bail them out or hoping that they win a court case to bail them out is a very bad strategy, and that they have to try to take some proactive moves themselves. And so I don't know if this is the proactive move that solves all of their problems, but in the broader picture of sort of how are the people that run college sports looking at the situation they're currently in, I find this kind of announcement interesting, because you've got more and more athletic directors who are coming out saying, listen, at some point we're going to have to give more money to our athletes, and we should be giving more money to our athletes. And maybe this is the way to implement something like that without totally losing control over it.
Dan, great stuff, man. We appreciate it. It's a never ending, this along with realignment and Lord knows everything else. We appreciate your time, and thanks for jumping on during a busy day.
Thanks for having me.
Dan Murphy, ESPN, on yet another, I guess you could say, opportunity of what the NCAA would like to do, what other schools might be able to do. And yet again, I just feel like that somehow another red tape will get involved.
The way that the NCAA approaches this is like two adults trying to communicate that you're taking the kids out for ice cream, but you don't want them to know until they've eaten their dinner. So you're like, hey, after dinner, we're going to go to the store. And then the store is code for ice cream, as opposed to just saying like, hey, everybody, we're going to have ice cream. Like, just say it. Just say it. Like, let everybody know. Like, they're having to talk around these things. It's already hard enough. Like, and I get why they can't do it with recruiting, because that can be kind of just bananas. I mean, Lane Kiffin could get up and be like, these are kids from high schools I'd like to send a shout out to do today. And then it gets kind of wild, and then you start a whole new thing. But with name, image, and likeness, especially for kids that are already on your campus, like, just tear down the walls, man.
Proactively assist in the development, creation, execution, or implementation of a student-athlete's NIL activity. Develop product, develop promotional materials, ensure student-athlete performance of contractual NIL activities consistent with institutional policy. Provide services other than education to support NIL activity. Provide access to equipment to support NIL activity, cameras, graphics, software, computers. Also, communicate with third-party licenses about NIL opportunities for enrolled student-athletes, including securing specific opportunities. Such communication could be from institutions or their official designees. Those are some of the things that they're looking at as something new. When we come back, Paul Catalina's Top 5. This is 365 Sports.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Sausage wrap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 Monday thoughts after week 6. Number 5, Baylor's in deep bleep right now. They are.
Say it.
Say it? They're in deep shit. They just there's no way around this. I mean, I'm having a trouble seeing a way through for Coach Aranda and this staff because I don't know if they can win enough to where they barely miss a bowl game. You can say, well, we did this well, but they've not done anything well. They've had one good quarter the whole year, and they beat an FCS team just by being the FBS team on the field.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So that like, I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to prognosticate anything. I'm just having a hard time seeing the way through.
Yeah, I mean, I'll push back a little bit on they've had one good quarter. I think they've played some good quarters, but they haven't played very good games overall. Yeah. And the UCF win, which is their most impressive win and only their second win, was all based on one quarter. So, yeah, I think they played a good quarter or two against Utah, or a good quarter or two here and there. But, no, the point stands, and the thing that could prevent it is a buyout. The thing that could prevent it are the things that, come into play that don't have anything to do with us just as fans or as media saying, well, that dude deserves to be fired or they should make a change. Those are the kinds of things that can stand in the way. Here's my whole issue, though, with the way this is going, and if it continues on the trajectory that it is, and then no changes are made. How do you sell the fan base throughout the rest of this offseason, this next offseason? What do you sell them on?
Yeah.
What are you convincing them of? What are they getting excited about? Because you just did that. You just did that this entire past offseason with the transfers and all these different things, coordinator changes. So you go into the offseason and then just another 8 months of just trust us. I don't think you can afford to do that anymore because I don't think you got people turning up at the spring game anymore. I don't think you've got people investing the same way anymore. So, yeah, I mean, they're in a pickle. The only solution is winning. And thankfully, I think for everybody, there's a couple of weeks of just everybody can catch their breath and just sort of chill out and not worry about a result this weekend. And then, go from there when they get back here in a couple of weeks. But I think the break comes at a great time. Certainly everybody needs it. But, yeah, I mean, what do you sell in the future as if it doesn't get any better this year? That's going to be a long offseason. And what are you telling recruits? How is recruiting getting any better if all of a sudden you are very much on the hot seat? So, anyways, we'll have plenty of time for deeper discussions about this.
Yeah. Number 4, Mario Cristobal will need a big W to wash this off, and he may never. He might. Chris and I talked about it on the triple option earlier today, and it might be one of those things. He could win a national title at Miami, and instead of people saying hey, good job on the national title, they'd be like, man, I never thought you could do it after that Georgia Tech game. They're still going to bring it up because it was so terribly bad what he did. And I can't even begin to think what the message boards were like in the immediate time of it. And then he took full responsibility for it, sure. And I guess it's part of the culture of coaching and players and all that, but I wonder if Tyler Van Dyke would have just taken a knee and taken a quick yelling hey, I told you to run this play. Be like, hey, the clock's run out. The game's over now. We're fine.
There's no way that if any of the players on offense would have made a comment, what are we doing? Just take a knee, and a player had done that. There is no way they should be disciplined by the head coach. Now, if you're in the military and your commanding officer says run up that hill no matter what's coming at you, that's what you do, right? But in football, someone with a football IQ, and there's no way that Tyler Van Dyke doesn't, or the left guard or the running back, somebody there needs to intervene.
Well, I mean, there was a player they showed on the sideline camera who was like, what are we doing? And obviously he wasn't going over to the coach to say anything. But, yeah, I mean, that was just baffling. And, again, bad enough that you had fans of all backgrounds wondering if there was, gambling involved. I mean, that's how bad it was. And so, and depending on how the rest of the season goes, what if they're on the outside looking in of the playoff because of that one loss where you just totally, threw the result away? Yeah, that was awful. That was awful.
Yeah. Number 3, somebody woke up Uga. That I guess maybe that's Auburn. Maybe Georgia woke up themselves. I don't know, but I thought Kentucky would have had a pretty good shot at keeping that thing tight while not winning between the hedges, but holy cow. They unleashed. So whatever Kirby Smart said this last week worked, and Georgia's schedule already not that hard on the way out. I fear for the bodies of the players that have to play against Georgia after that one.
Yeah, I mean, you thought that would be far more competitive than it was, and Georgia had shown a little bit of maybe not being as greatly as touted, but yeah, they're really good. They're still really good, and they can turn it on when they want to, I suppose. And they definitely had some control over that because they turned the on button on this past weekend. And yeah, that was a massacre. And they're really good. No surprise. And they're the number 1 team in the country for a reason. And I don't think it's just like last year. I think that they've got the goods. They just maybe hadn't shown it up until Saturday all the way, but they've shown it now. And any murmurs or questions about, well, do they deserve to be, or are they really I think that's all gone to the wayside pretty quickly.
Did you guys look at the overall team stats?
A little bit, yeah.
Wasn't it maybe 600 yards to 180 or something like that?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And I turned that game on for a minute when we here, and I was like, all right, here we go. You guys had left to go to the game, and Garrett and I were here, and then all of a sudden it was it was just a red wave, just unbelievable rolling over Kentucky. So unreal.
I'm sure Kirby Smart before the game said, listen, nobody thinks you can win another game. Nobody believes in us. And part of it this time might be that there were people questioning them.
Yeah, they're saying you're not as good as last year. Yeah, all those things. Number 2, Alabama's just fine. They're not great. They're not what Nick Saban probably wants them to be, but they still have the best coach in the country. They have a good staff. They've decided that they're going to operate within themselves. And Nick Saban just basically dared Jimbo to Jimbo a couple times during the game, overcame turnovers and sacks and penalties. This does not look like any kind of good Alabama team. But in the SEC West, the way that it is right now, they're probably just going to walk through and win it because they're the best coach team.
I know that they gave up some yards too, but I thought that they're starting, some of their playmakers on defense are starting to make plays more than just being in the game. They're starting to get pressure from their front. They're not perfect, as you said, by any means, but they're starting to have guys make big plays on defense, too.
Yeah, their defense is really good, and, Jalen Milroe, I thought, played a really good game, and he's obviously got some skills, but I think this is, a master class in coaching that we're watching from Nick Saban in so many ways, the way he sort of handled this first part of the season, and, they've got everything still there for the taking, despite the loss to Texas. So, yeah, they're in good shape. They're just fine, like you said. I don't know if they're an all-time great team by any means, but they don't have to be to win big things. And, they're going to be a fascinating team to watch the rest of this way.
Yeah, I just love the ability and the constitution to sit through that USF game that they had and look at everybody and go, look, you don't think I'll do this to you? If you don't buy in, you don't think I'll do this to you? I'll do it.
No, he might be enjoying this more as a challenge to kind of just get an adrenaline rush. By the way, back to Kentucky, they had 329 yards rushing against Florida. They had 55 against Georgia.
Yep. Yeah, I think did Georgia clearly watch the Florida tape and said, we're not allowing this to happen to us, and we're way better than that. That's no chance that's happening. And that was the question with Kentucky was like, they ran for, buku yards, but are you going to do that again? Are you going to do that against Georgia? And no, the answer is no. They were not going to do that again.
Yeah. Number 1, Jimbo Fisher has not changed. Coach of the Year 2013. Polishes it off. Looks at it all the time. Look at this. Look how awesome I am. Well, it's 2023, Jimbo. You got to go for it on 4th down. You got to take some chances. He is dead last, and thanks to Zach Barnett, our friend from Football Scoop, for compiling this, but pretty much dead last over the decade in going for it on 4th down. And 2013 FSU, you can kind of buy that because they didn't have a lot of 4th downs that year. They didn't need to. 2014, they had to come back in a bunch of games that probably spiked the numbers a little bit where he did, but then it's just nothing's changed. And if you give Bobby Petrino the permission to call the offense, but don't let him go for it on 4th down, and you've still got that complete control over it, then are you really letting Bobby Petrino call the offense? No, you're not. And so they're right back in the middle of it. Like they're right there. So.
Yeah, I mean, that was a bad look for them. That was a big opportunity and big chance to really make some waves and to prove that they're on a different course than they have been in years past. And I think you feel like you got dealt a big old egg, right, with that result. And, I know that the conversations are fiery when it comes to his future and buyouts and all those different types of things. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that continues to play out the rest of this season. But a massive missed opportunity for them this past Saturday.
I listened to, and I hate to say this, but like during the second half of Baylor and Texas Tech, monitoring the game, I listened to Saban, I listened to Venables, I listened to Sarkisian. He was with some players. I listened to one other post game, and then I listened to Jimbo. And it would drive me nuts because his post game, and perhaps if you're an A&M fan, you can say I'm wrong, but everything to start for minutes upon minutes upon minutes is almost going through every situation that occurred during the game. Not an opinion about it, But like when
Yeah.
we had a fourth down, we went for it's about it's like reading a play-by-play sheet instead of just getting in a post-game statement and letting people ask him questions about what he reeled off for the first 5 minutes of the press conference.
Yeah, those are the things that's going to get him undone at A&M is that
almost a filibuster.
He's not adaptable.
Carrot, do you have the stat from Oregon and Washington to close out today's show? Paul, thank you so much. Saturday's Oregon at Washington game is the first Pac-12 matchup of teams 5-0 or better since 2004 when USC beat Arizona State badly. For comparisons, it's happened 15 times in the SEC since 2004. 5-0, just simply 5-0. That, to me, that's from Chris Falica's great at stats, now with Fox, I think. That blew me away when I saw that pop up on my timeline. Emery, Winter, thank you. Jack McKenzie, Garrett Ross as well, Levi, and everybody that is going about their business and helping us in what we do, throwing up the material and the content. Those of you in the chat room, thank you. We were going to announce the Texas Beef House gift certificate winner, but I didn't see him on the chat, so we'll try to see if M. Barr is a part of it tomorrow. For Paul Catalina, for Craig Smoak, thank you so much to our guests and our sponsors. Good night. Sports tonight on the CW at 10:30, 365 Sports.